World War Z, the zombie film that had no business being as good as it was after a doomed production that went through several reshoots. The Brad Pitt-led film became the most successful zombie film at the box office, but let's break down all the problems and dilemmas that the production faced.
What's up, movie friends? Welcome back to Raiders of the Lost podcast, the ultimate film and TV podcast. And today we're covering one of the most exciting, biggest, bombastic zombie movies ever, World War Z. It just got put on Netflix, so we watched it and we were like, let's do an episode on this because
it's that good.
I know it's kind of there's a mixed reaction to World War Z, and I know it's not a perfect movie and it's not the best zombie movie, but goddamn, it hits real hard. It's exciting, it's huge, it's full of spectacle and scale, some crazy imagery we've never seen in the genre. We got a new look at what a zombie movie could be from World War Z. And on top of that, it's just a miracle that this movie not only came out, but came out pretty well, and then was highly successful at the box office, grossing $540 million globally, becoming the biggest hit in Brad Pitt's career because this production was riddled with chaos.
However, despite a huge box office number, $500 million, that doesn't mean that it became a very profitable film. It probably has since then based off VOD and maybe merchandise sales, because on a budget of estimated $190 million to $250 million, it grossed $540 million at the box office. But again, we always talk about how box office numbers, you always have to factor in movie theater ticket sales. They get a cut of the ticket. They don't show movies just for funsies, everybody. So if anything, this movie probably broke even at the box office for the studios. Maybe a little profit. Who knows? Maybe a teeny tiny bit of profit. But did that justify the stress involved and the many reshoots? Probably not. But it ended up being an awesome flick. Again, released in 2013 on IMDb. World War Z has a 7.0 user rating with over 730,000 ratings. Rotten Tomatoes, it's a 67% critic score, 72% audience score. Letterboxd, it's a bit lower at a 3.1, and it was filmed first from June to November in 2011, and then this movie went through an entire restructure and reshoot for the second half, third act of the film, and filmed again a year later in October to December 2012. And a quick synopsis on this film. Life for former UN Nations investigator Gerry Lane and his family seems content. Suddenly, the world is plagued into a mysterious infection, turning the whole human population into rampaging, mindless zombies. Except for those few survivors. After barely escaping the chaos, Lane is persuaded to go on a mission to investigate the disease. What follows is a perilous trek around the world where Lane must brave horrific dangers and long odds to find answers before human civilization falls. This was based off the hit novel World War Z, titled the same thing, written by Max Berry, was his name?
Max Brooks.
Max Brooks, sorry. Max Brooks.
Sorry, Max.
Brooks was here.
Brooks was here. Now, there are two versions of this film. So the film has a 7-point rating on IMDb and then a 3.1 on Letterboxd, kind of mixed, very below average rating. I think the film is better than that because I've watched multiple times the unrated extended version. So what happened was, because they planned to make this movie a hard R, and they showed lots of brutality, lots of blood, lots of gore, lots of zombie kills, headshots all over the place. However, because of the extensive reshoots of nearly doubling the budget, Paramount was like, we need to make our money back, and we don't feel confident we can do that now, with this being a rated R movie. So they forced Mark Forster, the director, to basically neuter the film, take out any blood, take out any gore, and make it a PG-13 film, which ended up working for the studio, but they put out a weaker film for it. The unrated version is the best way to watch this film because not only are you getting added zombie kills, you're getting tons of extra zombie content, as well as there's many moments in this film where there will be black blood stains because they weren't allowed by the MPAA to hit a PG-13 rating to show red blood. So oftentimes, Gerry, Brad Pitt's character, when he has that cast in his arm, it's covered in black goo.
So dumb.
It looks like oil, but it's actually supposed to be blood because the real version of this movie is very bloody.
Well, it's not a cast, right? Isn't it a
the magazines to support him, to protect him. That is supposed to be blood all over his arm. Also, when he slices the arm off the soldier, when she gets bit, there's blood pouring out of that, like oozing, like with a heartbeat. You know what I mean? Like pushing it out. And then on top of that, tons of zombie kills, tons of headshots, a lot of Gerry like headshots with rifles. So that added so much more stakes, added brutality. It added great conflict and really made it feel more visceral of a film. The PG-13 theatrical cut is still great. It's heart pounding. They did a great job with the action sequences of really getting your heart racing. They're very suspenseful, very propulsive. But the unrated version, it's an extra 7 minutes, and it really puts it over the edge of being a really top-tier zombie movie, in my opinion.
I enjoyed the hell out of revisiting this. I didn't rewatch it with the unrated version. I've seen the unrated version in the past. And Netflix, it's the rated version, but you can rent the unrated version on Amazon. And I recommend, I wish I did the other night when I watched this, because I forgot how good that was. And I forgot that there was another version. But revisiting it, I haven't seen it in a few years, and I always have liked World War Z. I've always thought it's a great movie. It has problems, it has issues, it has a ton of continuity issues, which I'm excited to talk about in a little bit because it's really fun. Every movie has issues, but this one is full of them. Lots of errors in editing, and kind of all these reshoots, but they're probably handcuffed with what they could do on the reshoots. But overall, man, I was on the edge of my seat rewatching this film. It's so propulsive. And I love how quick it gets going, because so many, I feel like, horror movies or big action blockbusters that need energy quickly, they fail to do that. They set the characters up too much with too much of a first act.
Looking at you, Abigail.
Exposition's off the walls. We have to introduce every character, their backstory, where they're from, what their favorite color is. It's ridiculous. What are we doing this for? But World War Z, it opens up with this interesting wannabe Danny Boyle intro. This movie wants to be Danny Boyle so bad in the beginning, because with this great supercut of everything happening around the world with this cool piano and synth music, Danny Boyle 101, basically, starting with a lot of cool intro images, whether it's 127 Hours, Slumdog Millionaire, whatever movie you're watching 28 days later, Danny Boyle is like the king of that intro slide and sizzle reel. They pull it off here. It looks good. But the whole time I'm like, this movie wishes it was made by Danny Boyle. But they got a lot of inspiration from 28 Days Later, I'm sure.
And I'm sure it was made maybe in last minute to really help facilitate getting this movie started, as opposed to what they probably first shot.
Probably. So it's a really interesting opening to get this eerie sense of all these things happening around the world, not just with human beings, but also things happening in nature. You know, it's eerie and sets you on edge and gets you in the mood for what you're about to watch. And then we're with this family in the kitchen. Brad Pitt, we get quick exposition. He used to work in places like this on the TV really fast. We don't have to know too much about him. Within a minute, we know who he is, what his family is. He retired. He makes pancakes for his kids. He's driving to the school with his wife, and boom, outbreak happens within 5 freaking minutes. This is how you do it, Hollywood. We don't need 18 scenes of exposition on Gerry and his past. We don't need flashbacks. Bada bing, bada boom. Even the kids understood what's going on. It's so fast, and I love how quickly it opens.
Yeah, and for a movie that was rewritten, they did a good job opening the film. And the attack in Philadelphia, it's surprising. It's very visceral. It's hugely immersive, and it's very exciting of an opening sequence. And it really helped the film start with a bang and got the audience right up to speed with what this was going to be. Yes, there are some slower moments in this film, but there's a lot of huge action and a lot of carnage in this movie. And I really enjoyed the Philadelphia sequence. It's really incredible.
I think they actually shot in Glasgow, too.
Some of it in Glasgow, too, yeah. So actually in Glasgow...
In
Scotland, they asked for 2,000 extras for that scene. And 3,000 people showed up.
I would show up.
And they weren't able to feed everyone or even pay everyone because there's too many people to handle. There's so many things that went wrong with the production of the film, but the opening of the film is very strong. Now, the opening scene, the pancake scene, that was also a reshoot. So everyone always says, oh, the third act was reshot. Because they made a new third act, they had to change a ton of stuff in the beginning, middle acts. And so the opening pancake scene, that's one of the things that they added. Christopher McQuarrie actually helped write that scene. So Drew Goddard and David Lindelof came up with that opening pancake scene to give us up to speed of who Gerry is. He's a family man, and give the audience the emotional stakes for our lead character. And then it wasn't quite perfect. They hired McQuarrie to clean up that dialogue. So you had 3 crazy, talented, successful writers make that pancake scene.
And what's interesting, that ties into a continuity error that I like with this film, which is fun to poke at and try to look out for in the movie, where Gerry, played by Brad Pitt, he's got pretty long hair in this movie.
It's great.
It's inconsistent in its length because He had long hair when they did the original shoot, really long hair down to his shoulders. But there's a lot of sequences and a lot of scenes where it's long, but it's just below his ears.
Yeah.
And there's at least probably another maybe 2 inches in length in other situations, like in the W.H.O. sequence later in the film. His hair is down to his shoulders. They do a good job of it being close, but because he cut some of his hair, I'm sure after filming, they could only go as far as they could to grow it out, and without adding extensions to make it look terrible. I'm guessing they rolled with it, or maybe they did add extensions.
Well, they realized that everybody would be looking at his face.
Exactly. So it's one of those things where you don't notice it when you watch it, but then when you hear about it and you look back on it, he has inconsistent hair lengths in this movie, but no one's gonna know.
Still looks
it's
great
just one
to
of
me.
those fun continuity errors. That's just a fun goof to every movie has issues. There's continuity errors in every movie, but that one's kind of fun.
And Brad Pitt actually only made this movie because his sons were fans of zombie movies, and he wanted to make a movie that they could watch and enjoy. And so that was him actually, his motivation for buying the rights to the book by Max Brooks. He was actually in a bidding war with Leonardo DiCaprio for the rights to World War Z, going up against his plan B, going up against Appian Way from DiCaprio. He ended up winning the rights, and then he's the one who sought out Mark Forster for the film, being a fan of Forster's work. Forster's made some very good movies. He did Finding Neverland. He did Monsters Ball. He unfortunately made Quantum of Solace, which is not the best James Bond movie, and World War Z. He's a very capable director. However, it ended up not working for him on the big blockbuster scale. Quantum of Solace was riddled with production issues, but also they were dealing with the writer's strike of the time. So that movie was just like it. They barely got out unscathed with making that film, and that's why it's the weakest of the bunch.
2007, right?
So Daniel Craig was actually writing scenes with Forster like the day before they were shooting those scenes. So a lot of Quantum of Solace is reshoots and working without writers on set to help them out.
And, well, this movie was also shooting while writing at the same time. They didn't have a finished script when they went into production. The original script was done by Michael Straczynski, who identified the challenge in adapting the work as creating a main character out of a book that reads as a UN report on the zombie wars. Now, if you've never read the book, it's not really a narrative story with a main character driving forward a plot. Like Straczynski said, it's sort of like reading files and reports that UN people have written down as accounts of things all around the world of the zombie invasion.
It's Brooks is interviewing everyone around the world about
Gotcha.
it. That's what it is.
Okay.
So it's not multiple people. So Brooks actually named his lead character after himself.
Wow, that's so narcissistic.
And so Brooks in the novel travels all over the world, speaking to both very important political figures as well as everyday people, to get a sense for the zombie war and what happened. And World War Z is actually a follow-up to a different book that he wrote called something about the zombie wars.
World War D?
World War Z. Why? And so that book was about the war, and then World War Z was about after the fact. And so humanity in the book, every country has figured out a way to live with the zombie crisis, and the entire world has basically altered their state of their infrastructures, and they're dealing with the crisis of the zombies. They're not necessarily they haven't defeated the zombies, but they're winning, and most countries have gotten back to the way they were. However, life is very different, and so Brooks is investigating what went wrong, what happened with the geopolitical climate, and why some countries did well, others didn't do well. What were the mistakes that everybody made in different pieces of the puzzle, and how could it be prevented again in the future? In the book, there is no cure that is ever found, but it's a fascinating read because you can see how each country went about the zombie crisis in a different way. America was decimated, but then what's really cool is America, with their military, formed a huge line of infantry soldiers, two rows of infantry soldiers across the entire country, north to south, and then they all walked across the entire country, killing every zombie they could find. And that's how they cleared America. Just a huge line of soldiers clearing out every part of the country.
America.
And then other countries didn't do very well, and we get beats and little phrases and hints of these things that are in the book sprinkled in the film. But for the most part, we don't really get much to do with what really happens in the film. In the book, also a huge difference from book to film is the zombies in the book are slow, and actually they're pretty easy to kill. The problem is there's so many of them. And the real issue of the conflict with World War Z is the nations didn't do a good job with organization, taking the threat seriously, and putting together great forces of opposition against the zombies, where cities and countries were quickly overrun, not because they were super fast zombies like in this film that turn in 12 seconds, but just because the infrastructures weren't dealing with it properly. And that's one of the main points of interest for the film, talking about how the problem was handled. And also, there's no cure found, but everybody's dealing with it in different ways.
I like how it goes after the global bureaucratic response to something like this, how there is a UN, but every country sort of acts of their own accord unless they're acting in accordance with their alliances and their allies. So it's really interesting. And I like how they touch on that a lot in this film.
But the original draft by Straczynski, that's what it was. It was very, very loyal to the book.
But he also looked at it and approached it sort of like the Bourne Identity, as this sort of lone hero.
Incorrect.
Really? What did I read?
So the new writer that was brought on, Matthew Carnahan, so Straczynski's script was loyal to the book and followed Gerry Lane instead of Brooks, who carried out the interviews.
Well, I'm reading right here. Straczynski identified the 2002 spy film The Bourne Identity as an appropriate comparison.
I have Matthew Carnahan, the second writer on the film, took it as a Bourne Identity's tone.
Maybe they both did. Yeah.
However, the studio, for whatever reason, didn't want to go with his draft of the script, which many
Carnahan's?
With Straczynski's
The
first
original draft.
Now, that draft made it onto the blacklist, which is the list of the most renowned unproduced scripts in Hollywood. It was on that list. However, for some reason, the studio didn't want to go with that. Maybe they didn't think it would make enough money. It was clearly what Brad Pitt wanted to go for. And then they brought in Matthew Carnahan, who brought on a very action, spectacle-heavy adventure film, and making the lead character of Gerry being more of, we're following his shoes as the crisis is happening, rather than Gerry being an after-the-fact interviewer. And then after that, Goddard and Lindelof were brought on for the reshoots, and McQuarrie was brought on to clean up dialogue.
And it's a Paramount production and distribution, and Skydance as well as Plan B. Plan B is Brad Pitt's production company. Skydance is J.J. Abrams. So it's interesting. I wonder if J.J. Abrams was ever...
David Ellison.
I thought J.J. Abrams owned Skydance.
David Ellison, Megan Ellison's brother, and Megan Ellison owns Annapurna Pictures. Skydance is owned by David Ellison.
I thought that...
He just produces JJ movies.
Oh, he just produces them?
Yeah.
I thought he was a partner with them.
He's a partner with JJ. I mean, I'm sure he signed JJ Picture deal.
Wow,
but
you're just proving me wrong.
Sorry,
constantly.
man.
Hey, man.
So Annapurna Pictures, who made a bunch of movies in the 2000s, PTA, they did Her, they did The Master. She's the owner of that company. Megan Ellison is the sister of David Ellison, who owns Skydance.
Gotcha.
They're actually both the children of a New York billionaire. And when he passed away, he left them his billions, and they both made production companies.
I would do the same thing.
Yeah, I would do the same thing too. She went indie art house. She made amazing movies, but they never made good money. She's actually been producing the video game Stray, as well as a couple other movies here and there. But she's not. Unfortunately, her movies
Is that the cat?
The cat video game.
Cat video game.
I love her because she was throwing like Paul Thomas Anderson $50 million to make a movie. No one else would. So she got amazing films made, but they never did well at the box office. Whereas David Ellison with Skydance went to JJ, Star Trek, a bunch of Paramount movies, and now they've actually teamed up with Paramount. He's actually signed a deal with Paramount this year, and they're basically joint partners in many ways for future productions. But that's David Ellison's company.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. Was Top Gun Maverick Skydance as well?
That's just Paramount.
Just Paramount.
Yeah,
I can't remember.
That's Bruckheimer, bro.
Gotcha. So yeah, I better make up for that flub. Well, I can talk about the cinematography.
Don't mess it up, man.
Done by Robert Richardson at first. He was initially hired.
The 3-time Oscar winner.
But then he departed abruptly because he was going to go film Django Unchained with Quentin Tarantino in 2012. And then Newton Thomas Segalis was his replacement for the reshoots at that time of photography. But then Ben Saracen was brought on for the extensive reshoots back in 2012. And at one point, Richardson was going to get the sole credit as cinematographer on the film, even though technically there were 3 cinematographers. But after learning that the color grading was going to be significantly changed and altered, he asked for his name to be removed from the film. So Saracen is the one who received full credit for World War Z, even though there's also Robert Richardson and Newton Thomas Segalis.
Brad Pitt got Robert Richardson involved, and he's one of the greatest DPs ever. He's shot a lot of QT movies, a lot of Scorsese movies, 3 Oscars. He's just one of the best to ever live.
Pretty good.
However, he left mainly because of the overscheduling conflicts where it got to the point where Django was ready to shoot, and he's like, I'm bouncing because The relationship with Mark Forster, the director of this film, with everybody was tumultuous and chaotic. Mark Forster, even though he had helmed a big film in Quantum of Solace, from all the reports I could find, every interview I could find, and just discussions about the film, as a director, he was unorganized and unconfident, and was basically falling apart in terms of controlling a set.
Really?
To the point, that's why he left, Robert Richardson left, because the collaboration was so harsh, and there was so much contrast and conflict. A lot of what was happening is Mark Forster didn't know what he wanted. So Mark Forster, 2 weeks before they started production on World War Z, he, the director of the film, was still unsure of how exactly he wanted the zombies to look and act.
What?
He wasn't sure if he wanted it to be slow zombies like the book or fast zombies like we ended up getting. And on top of that,
That's quite the change.
the organization of the production from the start was horrible. So the first place they shot in was Malta, and they shot a bunch of sequences there. However, the organization was so bad that they were losing tons of money. They were overfilled with extras, and they actually lost a lot of billing paperwork, and to the point where Paramount pulled the plug on the rest of the Malta shoot. They actually had to scratch 2 big effects-heavy sequences that they had planned because they were going so over budget and over schedule in Malta. Paramount was like, get out of Malta, move on to the next sequence. We can't keep spending money here. You guys are just burning money, not getting much done. Also to the point where Mark Forster and Brad Pitt's relationship ended up souring by the end of production, to the point where they were barely talking during the reshoots, and Brad Pitt just being frustrated with working with Forster for his lack of organization and general direction of overseeing this, to the point where they weren't so much not on speaking terms during the reshoots, but they were just working with a lot of animosity and just trying to get through the workday. People said that I found accounts saying that they stopped talking to each other, and there was a middleman to communicate between the two of them. But then Forster, when that came up to him in an interview, he said it never went that far, but he did say it did get really bad between him and Brad Pitt, where Brad Pitt was very unhappy with him as a director by the end of the filming.
Oh, I read that he denied all of those stories, adding that when they both learned of it, they looked at each other and kind of had a chuckle and had a laugh.
I mean, that's press.
And true.
Doing press to promote a film, you don't want to...
Exactly.
I mean...
And that, of course, there was tension involved, but I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it was the former and that they weren't getting along and that they really did have an intermediary.
Why would Robert Richardson leave?
Because it's not the first time it's ever happened on a movie set.
Yeah, and Robert Richardson is a stand-up... he's just one of the greatest DPs. Like, why would he leave production of a film?
Well, because he'd done his job probably, and he's like, this is getting ridiculous. Or he did leave mid-production, that's true.
Yeah, left mid-production.
It wasn't the reshoot.
Last second. No, it was before reshoots. It's because the production was going so chaotically, to the point where there were 2 instances where the paperwork for paying extras was just lost.
I wonder who lost it.
It was just gone. And then it was found randomly in a drawer in some shelf. All of the paperwork to pay extras and catering.
That's someone, I guarantee that was an inside thing, because you don't just lose paperwork like that, then it randomly gets discovered.
And then there was in Malta, the first location of shooting, there was a point where the catering wasn't organized enough, to the point where they didn't have enough food to feed all the extras on set.
What?
So they had to delay production to get food for all the people that showed up to shoot that day.
Holy crap.
So the film production was just so heavily unorganized and chaotic that it's a miracle they even got it done. But that's why, like, as they were shooting as they were going, and you're having 3 DPs work on the film, and so it ended up being like this crazy, insane production that somehow got done, and they finished it. But then, unhappy with what was on screen, Pitt and the producers were like, "We need to do something because this isn't good."
Yeah, we'll talk about the changes to the third act and everything that was shot, and then reshot, but I want to lighten it up a little bit.
Yeah, there's a lot that works in this film.
There's a lot that works.
Yeah.
I want to talk about the zombies.
Yes.
When I think about what my favorite zombies are in movies, World War Z has to be top 3 of best zombies ever portrayed in film. They're different, whereas they're not constantly munching on brains and eating people. You know, we've entered this new era of zombies where killing people is kind of just like a need that is fine. I like Train to Busan. Train to Busan's might be my favorite ones because they do both. They're fast, they attack, they're savage, they're killing, but they're also eating and munching, which is great. These ones, for the most part, are just kind of killing and turning others a lot. And it sort of has that quality of 28 Days Later.
A viral outbreak.
Exactly. It's more aligned to that, which is
but
really
in the book
interesting.
they eat.
Yeah.
In the book they eat flesh.
But I love how they're portrayed in this film because of how fast and how violent they really are. Because when you think about what could a human body actually do, if it was so corrupted and just went into I will do anything to attack and kill
Animal
in
mode.
terms of destroying itself, breaking its own bones, smashing its own head against glass, just going as quickly as it possibly can, creating swarms of zombies that are just running on top of each other to the point where they're sort of like tidal waves coming through streets and in between buildings, up steps, and up even the walls of Jerusalem in the second to third act of the film. I think it's really terrifying, the zombies that were created in this film, because they're not more powerful than humans, but they sort of tap into the potential that human beings have for violence and strength and speed when they put their body completely on the line with no care of what's going to happen to them just in order to kill and feed.
It's like they're a dangerous animal.
Yeah.
And when I watch this film, I always look at the zombies as like those ants that can crawl on top of each other to form structures. And they do that outside the border of Jerusalem. They do that to get the helicopter and the poster. And they do that to take over. They lift over a truck. And it's interesting to see human beings acting as though they are mindless drones in a way, where they all share an objective of wanting to kill and spread. And like insects that have very minimal intelligence, or like a rabid animal, they will stop at nothing to do that. And like you said, to even harm themselves, they don't even care, as long as they're achieving the goal of ahead of them. And so I love the sequences like them climbing up that wall outside Jerusalem, and it's just like one of the most mind-blowing sequences I've ever seen in a zombie movie, if not the biggest one. And it's just unbelievable. And it was a movie that really showed that it made the human beings look like giant, like murderous animals more than anything. And speaking of the turn, I love the turn in the sequence in Philadelphia where Brad Pitt's Gerry, as he and his family are running away, he is keeping an eye on the guy who just got bit when the zombie broke through his windshield and bit him, and he fell onto the pavement outside of his car. And then while that's happening, we're getting the number count from his daughter's toy, which is counting up to 12. And while that's happening, this crazy chaos is happening. The audience and Gerry, they maintain their focus on this guy who's turning. Brilliant physical performance by the actor. And then it counts up to 12. 12 trains in this station. And then he's a full-on zombie. I really love that because it's telling the audience the rule right away. How big the stakes are because how fast they turn. And it's explaining how cities can be overrun in a matter of minutes like Philadelphia was. And also as the stakes of how do you stop this from happening? How can any city survive this kind of outbreak when it happens that fast and that violently?
I think the speed is one of the best parts of the film that adds so much stakes, because obviously the Philadelphia sequence in Pennsylvania, that city's gone immediately. Within minutes, they get away unscathed somehow. But that place gets turned so quickly because they're there and everyone's a human, and then in a minute, everyone's a zombie, basically. And I love how when they get to that ship, the carrier, where the military has all of their best people.
The Avengers are there.
And we see computer screens, we see screens in the background that are tallying the death toll in the world. It's already at 4.3 billion deaths, which is absurd. In, 10 hours? It's crazy. Of course, though, those small reports, and then you eventually learn from different characters, like the one in that prison that they enter.
David
Morse's character. I believe that was supposed to be Bryan Cranston, but he had scheduling issues.
Yes. Ed Harris also was supposed to be in the film.
Yeah, so that's a great character, but we learned that there are other outbreaks, other places, and different reports of where Ground Zero was, who Patient Zero was. Some people believe it was in China. Some people think it was in Korea. They don't really know where Ground Zero was. Everyone has different reports of what happened. But how quickly it just decimated the entire population of the entire Earth of human beings is shockingly fast, but that adds so much to the film in terms of how dangerous these zombies are. And they got to be up there as some of the best zombies, because some zombie movies, if they're slow walking, or even The Walking Dead, if you come across 5 zombies, it's not that much of a threat if you have a good weapon. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But what I think is so great about this film is even if there's just one zombie, you are shitting your pants as an audience member.
Yeah, and watching this film again, and I was just in my room watching this movie, and the apartment chase in Philadelphia up the stairwell.
Oh my goodness!
Great,
the
sequence.
red lighting.
Yeah, excellent sequence, and there's good scares. There's a good jump scare in there, as well as just like intense suspense. And just that small sequence like that, they just did a really effective job of portraying fear in a different way for a zombie movie. And this movie, it comes to life when when Gerry's being chased and running, and what makes him a great character, and it was a great choice because they originally turned him into an action hero, which they changed with the reshoots. In this film, he's very much just, he knows how to survive. He's not Rambo. He's not busting heads everywhere. Yes, he kills a few zombies, but he almost gets killed a few times, and the kid saves him in Philadelphia. So I like the fact that he is not like an unstoppable zombie killer, like we see in shows like The Walking Dead or other movies where they make it seem like it's a little too easy to kill zombies, especially when you have characters lasting for 8 seasons. Whereas this, it's like he barely gets out alive multiple times, and his real skill is surviving more than anything. Not fighting. His skill is surviving. And he has a great line to that family that take them in Philadelphia in the apartment complex, and he's telling them, you guys should come with us. Movement is life. He says, movement is life. It makes a lot of sense. He's like, everywhere I've been, people who stay, they die. People who go, they live. And that's basically the motivational core and theme of his character of movement, of escaping and being able to get through. And Philadelphia is a great example. He knows right away, I'm following that dumpster truck once it starts making waste in the road, but clearing out a way, clears out a lane. He's like, I'm following behind that thing. That's my only way out of here. So I like how he's not so much a fighter, but a survivalist.
He's very clever, too. And you can tell that this movie influenced other zombie movies like Train to Busan. For example, Gerry multiple times, like when they're escaping the apartment, they have to get to the roof because, Gerry, I will move mountains to get you here. They have to reach the top of an apartment complex, any one, they don't know which one, with the flare to be identified. And Gerry, before they're leaving the apartment, obviously offers the family to come with them. They don't want to. Eventually, the son does. He chases after them because their apartment gets attacked as soon as they go up the stairs. And Gerry starts taping magazines to his forearms and his wrists, which is so clever, so smart. And obviously, we remember that from Train to Busan, our big guy whose weapon was punching zombies in the face. He taped up his wrists and forearms. They all did that, too, in a different sequence. So you can see the influence that this movie's had on other zombie movies as well as just the violent nature of it. I thought that was really terrific. And you don't get so much of that in the PG-13 version. You lose out on a lot of the great blood, a lot of the great gore.
Yes.
But even then, it's still insanely suspenseful. My heart was pounding. This entire movie, it's nonstop for the most part with his action and its action sequences of just propulsive nature and propulsive movement. The story, just like Gerry, is constantly moving forward. We're entering new areas, new characters, new environments. We're not staying in one spot for too long. The longest sequence might be Jerusalem, which isn't even that long. It's maybe 15 minutes.
And it's mostly action. Really, the biggest low of the film is when they get to the naval base and we get an exposition, and then Gerry being put on his quest and being basically told, if you don't do this, your family's out. And so he has motivation to go, and he's not sure about going, but then he decides to. That's really like the slowest part of the film, because after that, it's either nonstop action or a really interesting story, or they're pulling something out from under the rug. And so I think that that being said, they did do a good job of keeping the audience on their toes and keeping the audience excited throughout most of this film, because it is very exciting. Now, real quick, one of my biggest cons to this movie, because you just said when he got the call, he's like, I'll move mountains to bring you here. I'll do anything to bring you here, whatever. My biggest problem with the film is that you have 2 lead characters. One's named Gerry, one's named Terry. Gerry and Terry. Because every time someone says Gerry or Terry, even on this rewatch, I was like, wait, which one's he talking about? Which one's Gerry? Which one's Terry? It's like, call him Theo or something.
Yeah, Terry too. You can tell a lot of the ADR in this movie.
Yes,
he's on the phone and his mouth isn't on camera and he's speaking, but you can hear that it's clearly done in post production.
Yeah, they filled in a ton of stuff as well as speaking of on the phone, when Karen calls Gerry when they're riding bikes evading the zombies, I'm always like, no, the fucking phone call.
She's just like in bed. Oh, yeah, I guess he's busy.
Is he with another girl?
So damn funny. Now, obviously, this movie had an alternate ending and so many different story beats. One of the most interesting parts that I wish we could have seen is the original cut of World War Z had about an 18-minute battle in Russia of humans versus zombies, and it was like an all-out, free, all for win, humans versus zombies to kind of win it all and kind of defeat this enemy big time.
In Moscow,
in Russia. This was shot, but it did make the final cut of the film because the original ending began like that. So this is how World War Z originally ended. It began with Lane and Segan, who was played by Daniela Kirstes, the Israeli soldier from Jerusalem, flying to Moscow, where they are immediately drafted into the army being built to fight the zombies. Instead of going to the W.H.O building, the original ending features a time jump showing a bearded Lane still fighting in Russia during the winter. It's during this time he realizes the zombies move slower in the cold, giving the humans an advantage to these conditions. He's been out of communication with his family this entire time, but he is finally able to speak to his wife, who has secretly had to strike up a relationship with Matthew Fox, his paratrooper, who's not in the final version of the movie, but he's in this. Oh, he's seen briefly in the theatrical cut.
He has 5 lines.
He's got 5 lines. So Matthew Fox is paratrooper who's in this movie. She has a relationship with him. She does that in order for him to help keep her safe and keep the kids safe.
So basically, they're in the Canadian refugee camp, and he basically forces her into a sexual relationship in order to let them stay. Just how they're kind of forced to. Gerry's forced to go on the mission to keep them on the base. They do the same thing where he's like, I will kick your family out of here if you do not enter into this relationship with me.
Later on, Lane, Segan, and a character named Simon begin traveling through Russia to go to the United States and save Lane's family. World War Z's final scene had them arriving in America and storming the country to find his family. So that's how it originally ended. It got very poor responses, not just from test audiences, but also from Brad Pitt and the executives at Paramount. Everyone was disappointed with this film. And they eventually, obviously, went to do reshoots, and they hired... This is when David...
Real quick, hold on. Still on Battle of Russia. So you can actually see some set photos of Brad Pitt on the boat, and he's got like this huge robe over his head. And
I gotta check this out.
He's got like armor on his arms, like battle armor, and it's like one of the last shots you can tell of the movie, and they're like getting ready for war. So on top of that, the crew involved in the film, while they were making the entire Battle of Russia, they were very unhappy with it because the film no longer was about characters, and it was no longer personal. And what happened was there's actually an 8-minute sequence, like an 8-minute straight action sequence of Gerry literally killing zombies left and right in Moscow, to the point where he's like, the crew ended up calling it the movie Rambo vs. Zombies, because it went so over the top with action, and it made no sense with who the character of Gerry was in the first hour and a half of the movie. Obviously, he's been recruited in this Russian army, but like it made no sense for him to be such an unstoppable killer of zombies. And since they were recruited, they were forced to be recruited by this Russian outfit. And also, when they got off the plane, the Russian army executed all the elderly people from the plane and all of the sick people from the plane, and then all the healthy, middle-aged, or young people were forced to fight against zombies for Russia. And on top of that, one of the things they were forced to do when there weren't big battles was they were forced to go into sewers to kill any zombies lurking around sewers. So there was actually going to be a scene of Gerry and his friends invading a sewer and killing zombies in the sewers.
I want to see this.
That sounds pretty cool, but also it doesn't quite make sense or fit for what ended up being the real heart of the film.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm
curious, though. I wish they would release that. Obviously, they never will.
You see some footage.
Can't
there is so in the epilogue with the voiceover of Brad Pitt's Gerry talking about we're getting together, we're learning how to fight. There's actually shots of the Russian battle you can see in that sequence, and there's more than 3 shots. You can see multiple images in video in film shots of some of the battle sequences. But it sounds interesting, but it's too convoluted. Like that should be a whole movie, Russia. Yeah. As opposed to like tacking that on at the third act of your film. So I think I agree with making the change, and it didn't suit what the first hour and a half of the movie ended up being, and really went in a completely different direction. So I think that honestly, this is one of the rare cases where extensive reshoots actually saved the movie, in my opinion.
Yeah. So it's interesting. I'm still curious. I bet you they got some cool stuff. So those reshoots, coupled with other overages, caused the film's budget to balloon to around $190 million, which is what they report, but some people estimate it was closer to $250 million. And this is 2013. Wow. And that shocked Paramount's president, Mark Evans, at the time. Several scenes shot in Budapest, including large-scale battles with the zombies in Moscow's Red Square, were dropped from the final cut in order to water down the film's political undertones and steer it towards a more general friendly summer blockbuster. A friendly summer blockbuster with zombies. And second unit director Simon Crane said, it wasn't character-driven anymore, just like what Anthony said. The filmmakers really need to think about what they wanted to do with the third act. Additionally, scenes were filmed at Pfizer Building at Discovery Park in Sandwich, Kent, for scenes where Gerry tries to find a cure for the zombie pandemic.
I gotta say, I do like the third act. I liked how small scale it is. And I do like how personal and intimate it is, and really Gerry with this small cast of people, because they went really big multiple times during the course of the film. So I actually do, in some ways, really like the smaller third act of the film. Now, with that Russian sequence done, that was the first cut of the movie. They knew the movie sucked. And so they were like, should we do reshoots? So they actually brought on Damon Lindelof to advise them and talk.
My favorite guy.
Yeah, my favorite mystery box guy, to discuss the film. And he actually advised them. He couldn't write on the film too much, but he advised. He said, you guys should just make a new third act with a new ending. And they actually took him up on it. He wasn't able to really commit to it on his own, so they hired Drew Goddard to basically do the bulk of the writing for the new third act of the W.H.O, of the plane crashing there, rather than the plane landing in Moscow. So all of that was new, and they reshot all of that. Peter Capaldi's in that. Ruth Nega's in that. I think that's the first thing I ever saw her in. So it's got a good cast for the people they got last minute. And Brad Pitt and the team, they shot all of that sequence. That was a completely new thing. But Lindelof did come up with the idea of, instead of finding a cure, what if you make the zombies unattracted to people who are terminally ill or have some kind of virus, and that would mean they would avoid them. That was Lindelof's idea. That was never in the story. There was never supposed to be any kind of cure from the first script, in the script that they shot. The first movie's cut had nothing about a cure. So not only did they have to shoot the entire third act again, but with that new idea of not curing the illness, but giving human beings a camouflage and a defense against the zombies, they then had to do the reshoots all out the film of Gerry seeing signs of that. He sees 3 times, he sees people standing in swarms of zombies being avoided. Well, he sees it twice. And then the story with the injured soldier talking about when they were in that room when the fire went up and zombies were everywhere. They avoided him because he has some kind of terminal illness showing from the limp in his leg. So we saw that. We saw the kid in Jerusalem being avoided by the zombies. And then we saw a third person, off the top of my head, I can't remember it, being avoided by the zombies. Those all were reshoots too, because they had the new act and the new cure, basically. That all had to be reshot. And so it wasn't just the third act they reshot. They reshot a shit ton of stuff throughout the entire course of the film to give us more hints to what was going to be happening.
Every movie, for the most part, has reshoots.
Yeah, big ones.
And I feel like it's become too common, though, to have reshoots on this kind of scale. Now, with World War Z, I think it was justified because we have all these great collaborators. It's a huge budget film, Brad Pitt movie. It's going to be a hit. You know, the studio, they could have just put this out there into the theaters and then washed their hands of it. You know what? Let's not spend another $40 million with Lindelof's idea. It's a cool idea, but do we really want to have all the stress and, you know, maybe there's more issues that come with the reshoots and reshoot another third act with $40 million? Do we want to waste any more money into it? But I think it ended up being the right decision because there's no way, I bet, that the original film would have been as successful as it was, because this movie really deserved that, because they went in with an idea and they realized it wasn't the right one. Let's go in there and change it for its benefit. And they ended up making a hit film. You know, it's a summer hit, $540 million at the box office. It's a huge hit, especially in 2013. That's huge. But I feel like today we have too many studios that are going into their films with the intention of planning to reshoot and saving studio space already ahead of time because, we know this probably isn't going to work. We might as well plan for 3 months of reshoots. But this was sort of what are we going to do? We can either release it or redo some stuff to make it a little better. And, you know, I like when studios have taken that approach where I feel like too many times we see movies that could have benefited from some reshoots, but studios want that quick income. They want that, opening weekend, that's where we're going to make the most of the money. Let's get some income in right now and wash our hands. Maybe we'll wash on it. Maybe we'll break even. But rather than that, this movie deserved to be reshot for the ending and make an all-around better film.
Well, since you're saying that, Drew Goddard in an interview actually said he was surprised at the studio not only going ahead with the new reshoots and completely changing the story for the better, but he was surprised he had never worked on a film where executives and a studio had invested so much money in just trying to make the movie good. and they cared about the film to the point where we don't want to release a bad movie. We want to make this film as good as we possibly can. So he actually found it to be a great experience rewriting the reshoots because they were very much open to his ideas, Lindelof's ideas of trying to make the film better for audiences. And also, you don't want this movie had a good $66 million opening weekend. It's a great opening. With a really bad critical reception, that might not have happened. It might have ended up making $30 million opening weekend if all the reviews were bad. And so they're also protecting their investment by trying to make the movie as good as they can and salvage what they had.
I wish they released it rated R, man, because
It's such a better movie rated R.
just 3 years later, Deadpool comes out, rated R, makes over $720 million at the box office, and it's those studio number crunchers. They just look at all these other reports of what rated R movies do. They don't see the potential of how big rated R movies can be.
Yeah.
There have always been rated R hits, but I wish they went rated R because it probably would have been so much better, more well-received. It was still a well-received film overall.
Yeah.
I mean, it has good ratings, good scores. Audiences liked it a lot. It's just got those issues in it. There's some editing issues. There's some funky, clunky things with the writing and some of the characters, some of the cuts. They don't make a ton of sense. And like I said, continuity issues. I have a couple more continuity issues.
Let's hear it.
So
Other than Brad's hair?
Other than Brad's hair, yeah. And this one is interesting because it sets everything in motion in Philadelphia.
Mm-hmm.
So when the opening of the movie, they're in their car, they're in a traffic jam, and they're in like a 5-lane road, and they're just cabs and cars everywhere. There's nowhere to go but behind them, to the left or right. There's cars everywhere, and they're just stalled. They're stopped. And then what happens is, they're having fun. The radio, they're listening, and it's talking about this rabies outbreak in some random city in some random country, and they're like, oh, that's kind of weird. And then suddenly a police motorcycle driver drives past Gerry's car and hits his rearview mirror. Or no,
Side mirror.
Was it a cop car?
Is a cop, motorcycle cop.
Okay, and then he gets out, and he's like, what was that? And he picks up his side view mirror, his rear view mirror.
Side mirror, sorry.
Picks up his side mirror, brings it back into the car, and then a police motorcycle driver, another one, comes up to him. Stay in your vehicle.
Yep.
Don't get out of your car. And then what happens to that cop? He gets bulldozed by a dump truck, right? But where'd this dump truck come from? Because he just got out of the car, and there was a traffic jam in every direction.
You're right.
Behind them, to the left of them, to the right of them. So there's no way a dump truck could have gone that much speed, going like 50 miles per hour to cruise past them. And of course, the dump truck does clear up the space, but they insinuated that this dump truck just came from nowhere because
It was the Tumbler.
Yeah, it was the Batman's Tumbler. So it's a bit of a continuity issue because every time I watch that movie, I'm like, where did that dump truck come from? Because there's nothing but cars behind them.
And also, like, it would, if it did clear that whole road, there's no way that dump truck could drive through 60 cars
That fast.
to get to them.
Yeah, and then it clears space, and sure, you accept it because it doesn't go too far after that. But that dump truck comes out of nowhere, man.
But honestly, it's such a great shock. I don't even care.
Yeah, me too.
It's awesome.
It's
Especially
fucking great.
Especially your first watch in theaters. I was like, oh, fuck, what was that? It's great. It's a great
pretty
moment.
awesome.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense, but it's okay.
Got a couple other ones.
What else we got?
So the zombies, what I love about them is how aggressive they are. They're constantly trying to kill whatever human they can see. And like I said earlier in the episode, they'll put their bodies on their line. They'll bash their heads and skulls against glass windows to break through, which they do consistently throughout the film. As soon as they see a human that they want to attack, they are rabid. It's consistent throughout the entire film until the third act in the W.H.O. when Gerry's down there. We have a great, thrilling 10-minute sequence of trying to get to Vault 139, where all the infectious, fatal diseases are, where they're intact inside that vault. And I love this. There's so much suspense built, and I can't wait to talk about it a little more in detail later on. But just this quick continuity thing where what happens is the zombies get cleared out by the others, and Gerry goes down there. He sneaks into Vault 139. Of course, he leaves his axe outside the door, and then he goes inside the vault, which closes behind him, and he's looking through all the stuff. Then he turns, and of course, there's a zombie waiting for him, right? But the zombie isn't trying to bash the glass, isn't trying to break through. He's just like, spooky.
You're right.
He's kind of spooky, but it looks great. And first couple watches, you don't notice it at all. You don't
I still
care.
hadn't noticed it.
Yeah, but if you think about it,
Yeah.
it's acting totally different than every other zombie in the entire film. It's not trying to bash through the glass. It's scary. It's like, I want to eat you.
It's like this.
It's just like munching the air, like he wants, like a squirrel. Great performance, whoever this actor was. It's so good.
There's a reason why they were like, this is the guy that we need in this scene.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He's terrific. And great shots, like the sort of side-by-side profile shot of the two of them together once he gets into the vault is really great. But to remain continuity with how the behavior of the zombies act throughout the entire film, even the other doctor turned zombie they have upstairs that they're watching and examining, he should be trying to break through that glass, man.
You're
Unless
absolutely
he's
right.
too smart, but he should be going after that glass.
You're absolutely right. They
Yeah.
should be like bashing their faces into the glass.
But
Absolutely.
it wouldn't work. It might have worked better.
Honestly, I've never even fucking realized
Yeah,
that.
right?
I've seen this movie like 6 times now. I never realized that, so it works.
There's another crazy continuity error that I've never picked up on either.
Okay.
And so this is when they're on the plane. Crazy sequence.
I love the plane sequence.
Plane sequence
Yeah.
is sick. And so he throws the grenade because there's no other resort. We're going to all get eaten by zombies unless I throw this grenade. Maybe we can survive. And I love that logic from Gerry. It's like, we're probably going to die, but this is our only chance at maybe surviving.
Every once in a while, I dream for a crash.
I know it's interesting that Brad Pitt's on a plane crash in a movie, just like in Fight Club, because it's Edward Norton, basically. So he throws the grenade, and it blows a hole in the fuselage in the wall of the plane, which actually, contrary to popular belief in movies, after a few seconds, it would stabilize,
Yeah,
and there
the
would still be
pressure.
turbulence, but it wouldn't be sucking people out consistently. But it's a movie; it looks sick, right?
I think they did a good job of people got sucked out immediately, but then it was really, really just heavy wind.
Yeah.
I don't think that it was sucking out the whole time.
It was sucking out for quite a while.
For a little longer, but I mean, I think they did that just to empty out the plane.
Well,
for
it's
them.
because there was no one left to suck out.
Yeah.
But it was still
what
like
she
that
said.
strong. There's no other verb to use. It's the best verb for
But
the
then
situation.
they did turn
everybody.
into like crazy wind.
Yeah. So
His hair is very long in that scene
it's
too.
it's long, man. I'm telling you. Go back. Look. At the
I'm thinking
images.
about it. It's like
It's
when
shoulder
it's
length.
it's like a foot long.
It's shoulder length in half the movie
Yeah.
and just below his ears in the other half. Now, the inconsistency here is a continuity editing crazy error. They probably noticed it, but no one will notice in the audience. So when Gerry throws the grenade, then the air pressure is all over the place.
Yeah.
And the plane's starting to turn, and there's intense turbulence. All the alarms are going off, the oxygen masks fall down and everything. And then the movie, it cuts to the pilots in the cockpit, right? And they're wearing those headsets that have microphones, speaking to whoever they're talking to for the coordinates and everything. And so they take those off, and they put on the pilots. They have these big-ass blue masks, basically. They cover their head.
like better oxygen masks.
Huge
Yeah.
oxygen masks. They almost look like space helmets. You know, they're almost to that point, but not quite. But they're enormous and they're blue. And they have tubing versus just an oxygen mask. They're tubed masks. They look like fighter pilot
They look
masks.
like Darth Vader in A New Hope.
Exactly, yeah. But they actually look like fighter jet
Yeah.
masks. You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
Without a helmet.
Yeah. I know what you're talking about.
So
yeah.
they put these on, they strap them around their heads, and then we cut back to the cabin where the hole is sucking people out, and Gerry and the soldier are trying to survive, and then they strap themselves in. And then we cut back to the cockpit, and the pilots, they have their microphone headsets back on.
no!
So it goes from microphone headsets to big-ass oxygen tank masks, huge ones that are blue, and then it cuts to them with just the headsets on again.
I didn't even catch it the other night.
And then
I
that's
didn't
when,
even catch this.
And then they say, prepare for impact, and they're just wearing the microphones.
oh my god! I remember them saying prepare for impact, but yeah, that went over my head, man.
Huge
Way
editing
over my
mishap.
head.
I think that, I don't know if they did it in the reshoots or what, but they probably were editing the movie and no one would notice.
Yeah.
I never really
Maybe
noticed.
they didn't even notice.
Maybe they didn't.
Like we said last week, nobody noticed the abyss lens wipe.
Yeah.
Not even the editor.
Yeah, even
And
James
not
Cameron.
even James Cameron noticed the wipe.
So it's pretty funny how big of a continuity error is on the plane sequence too.
Oh my god, that's wild. But I do love the plane sequence. It's fucking great.
It's sick, man.
Zombies on a plane? Come on, man.
It's very cool. Well, we've been talking quite a bit about this. I think we might need to take a little break to our intermission.
Let's do it.
And then we'll come back and chat some more about the epic action adventure zombie movie, World War Z. And before we continue, the very best way to support Raiders of the Lost podcast is to become a patron at patreon.com/Raiders of the Lost Podcast. Why would you want to be a patron? Because you get weekly bonus episodes that only patrons can listen to, as well as you get access to the ad-free version of our episodes, as well as access to our Discord, which is an incredible film community where we chat with you all the time. We have watch parties. It's such a blast. As well as another great way to support the show is to leave those 5-star ratings and reviews on Spotify and Apple. These ratings are essential to our show's growth because it helps us chart better on every podcast platform. It helps build reputability to the show. We're trying to hit 5,000 on Apple because I said that I would get a tattoo of Anthony's choice. So let's get those numbers up on Apple Podcasts. Final great way to help us is just share our show. Word of mouth is the best way for a podcast to grow. So if you know anyone likes horror movies, likes zombie movies, likes movies in general, just let them know and share every goddamn episode we've ever made with them.
This episode, of course, is sponsored by our friends at movieposters.com, the number one place to get your posters online today. Be sure to use our promo code Raiders10 right now at movieposters.com to get 10% off your order immediately. They are also doing a free movie poster giveaway in this episode. So if you want to enter for a chance to win a free movie poster from movieposters.com, all you have to do is go to the YouTube episode of World War Z on our channel, make a comment, any comment at all, that enters you automatically into the contest to win a free movie poster from movieposters.com. Again, just leave a comment in the World War Z episode on YouTube. Movieposters.com has a huge selection of pretty much every movie and TV show imaginable in their poster library, as well as all sorts of sizes, framing, and even backlighting for your poster needs. Whether you want a classic film poster, an original print, or your favorite blockbuster, they got you covered. So again, enter the contest in this episode on YouTube, and then for all of your poster needs regardless, go to movieposters.com, and don't forget our promo code Raiders10 to get 10% off your order.
All right, let's get into our intermission, Anthony. Are you ready for the movie quotes competition?
Yes.
Here we go. They strike, wrap around you, hold you tighter than your true love, and you get the privilege of hearing your bones break before the power of embrace causes your veins to explode.
Is that Anaconda?
Yeah.
Voight?
Yeah.
Oh my god, it had to be a giant anaconda.
One of my favorite video memes that goes around is there's a scene where Jennifer Lopez is just doing a ponytail with her hair, and she's just doing it for like 10 seconds. Then it cuts to John Voight, and he's just like, yeah, he's just like staring at her super creepily. And I'll see that meme, and it'll say, when your friend says to look at the girl at the squat rack, but don't make it obvious. And then it's like your friend, and what he does, he's just like, oh yeah.
Oh my god. All right, here's my quote. Please, boss, don't put that thing over my face. Don't put me in the dark. I's afraid of the dark.
Is that the Green Mile?
Yes.
Nice. Got it.
That's coffee. That's my coffee impression.
Pretty good.
Thank you.
Anthony, guess this movie release year. Con Air.
Oh, great one. 1996.
97.
He's one off. Great fucking movie. Your favorite actor's in it.
Johnny Cusack.
John Cusack's in there. He's like the FBI agent or whatever.
Yeah, that's exactly what he is.
What year did The Green Mile come out?
2002.
99.
Wow.
1999.
Of course, 1999.
Best year,
We've done
man.
an episode on that year. Okay, movie pop quiz time. We all know James Cameron directed Titanic, but who wrote it?
Someone else wrote it? He had a co-writer? James Cameron wrote it.
Yeah, he did. I tried to throw him off.
Nice try. Fail. Okay, David Morse, who has a great little scene in World War Z, played Jodie Foster's dad in what movie?
Oh, nice. Good pick. He's also an alien in that movie. Contact.
Spoilers! David Morse is not an alien, technically.
I mean, I hope he's not an alien. David Morse, are you an alien? All right, Anthony, who do you have for haters this week? Any unsubscribes?
Oh, we got some good ones. I was cracking up all day today and yesterday. Ready for this? Okay.
I'm ready.
Armani. It took this long to get featured in Letterboxd Top 4. Unsubscribed. The high prices of Giorgio Armani clothes will never stop. I have control over it, and they will stay. That was Giorgio.
I have one on that I found.
What is it? You found one.
It's from Christian Heflin.
What's up, Christian?
James watched more movies than Anthony this week. Unsubscribe. Brad Lasky, sorry.
This isn't an unsubscribe, but it's really funny. Finally got featured in Letterboxd Recap, and I got a 2-minute argument in the middle. I'm honored.
Honestly, it's like the best thing you can get.
We were like, oh yeah, back to Brad. 3 minutes later. Yella Butch on our Alien episode. I'm unsubscribing because you two guys are menaces and haven't done more movies from memory, especially Spider-Man 2 and 3.
Oh, that's a good idea.
We got to do that. We will. We will make it happen. Joshua wrote in our Wolverine episode, this episode should have been titled James and Anthony's Rick Dalton Mario impersonation show. The only impersonation missing is Gurney Halleck talking about brutal Harkonnens. Say it, man. Go ahead.
Brutal.
You guys have been my top podcast to listen to since your early episodes breaking down Tenet. Unsubscribe.
Yeah, we're pretty fun.
Tenet's a great episode.
That was a great
one to start with.
Thank you. Thanks for the comment. That was really
Thanks,
nice.
pal. Blah, 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 blah. We have Benin. It's my personal favorite of the year so far. He's talking about Snack Shack, recommending it.
Oh, cool.
Check it out when you guys get a chance for sure, or I'll unsubscribe. Actually, I would never.
That looks like a great coming-of-age team film.
I heard it's awesome, like a classic old school, like young guys movie. You know what I mean?
Just young dudes.
Just two teenage guys, just like making a small business. It sounds fun. Sounds like right up my alley. All right, next up. Alexander Sullivan. Someone asked about our Greece trip. What movies are we watching on the plane? And I said Gladiator, Interstellar, and Oppenheimer.
Yeah, I guess also, but whatever's on the plane.
Yeah. I'm not literally. I'm sure they.
I think you sounded literal.
Well, if they have them, that's what I'm doing.
That's what we're gonna watch.
Alexander wrote, wrong. 300 Rise of an Empire in my big fat Greek wedding. Unsubscribe.
And Troy.
All the Greek movies.
Yeah.
We should just keep it in the Greek family. Daniel Clark, we had a terrible hate comment on YouTube, and he wrote, unsubscribe. We got a lot of unsubscribes from that. This guy on YouTube he said we're the death of cinema.
Yeah.
And so Nathanos wrote, bro's a certified yapper. I'm unsubscribing and making a burner account just to double subscribe to Raiders.
Love it.
Hell yeah. Go after him. Jess Morales, I had to bite my tongue on that person crying about the ads in your YouTube video. I wasn't looking for a fight, so I stopped myself from replying to him with, you forgot to say unsubscribed. That would have been hilarious. Danny Solitz left us a really sweet note about that guy who said we're the death of cinema. And he gave us a really nice message on Instagram, followed by an unsubscribed.
Aw, thanks, pal.
And then we have blah, 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 blah. Sorry. We got a shit ton. We have so many unsubscribes. Okay, here we go. Mason on our Alien episode, dude quoted Gladiator on accident. A film with such class deserves to be quoted intentionally. Unsubscribed.
What was the quote?
I remember I said it was give him something they've never seen before.
Oh, yeah.
Something.
I'll give them something they've never seen before.
Yeah, I said it by accident, like in my own like phrasing. And then Fabrico Rotis wrote on our Alien episode, no unskippable 15-second ad in the beginning. Unsubscribe. Cole, about my car accident. Looks like Nancy's son gave you the ultimate unsubscribe. Sorry about your car. If anyone doesn't know, my car got hit while it was parked.
So he says.
Yeah. So
I'm
I
on
say.
to him.
Tom Windsor on our Alien episode. What's crazy is in 2017, I actually did my film production thesis on the monstrous man trope from horror films, and Alien was the film where I did most of my talking points. Big up Raiders. Also, unsubscribe for stealing my thesis for your YouTube views.
Yeah, we hacked you.
We got it, man.
We hacked him. You should probably clear your search history.
It's very helpful. Oh, yeah, clear that search history. Boris on our Alien episode. Too short of a breakdown. You got me unsubscribing. That's all. It was a bunch this week. It was great.
Man,
Thanks, everybody.
Those comments that guy was ridiculous.
Yeah, he called us the death of cinema.
It's pretty nuts, man.
Yeah.
God forbid people like to talk about movies.
I know, right?
Holy crap.
Man.
Holy.
For real.
Am I not allowed to just
You're
look
not
at
allowed
something and have an opinion?
You're not alled to. Not in his book.
What's crazy is we uplift movies so much.
Yeah.
We talk about how great they are all the time. Even a movie like World War Z, which is epic, but has a lot of issues, we still talk about how great it is.
Do you want me to read the quote for our listeners?
Have you done it before or no?
I did it on Letterboxd Recap.
Yeah, do it right now, whatever.
Yeah, so let's
I'm curious.
take a peek behind the curtain. All right, this guy, VFX on film on our Alien episode, I quote, "The death of cinema is when you have hundreds of thousands of film students turned film critics that make endless videos about Ridley Scott, Christopher Nolan, Spielberg, and Kubrick, and not one of them can actually write a good script today. The problem is most filmmakers are narcissistic fanboys. Godless, depraved filmmakers flooding film schools has taken away the absolute truth, humility, levity, and hope."
I mean, not every movie is about humility, hope.
Exactly, yeah.
I mean, okay. So what, you don't like horror movies?
I guess not. I don't think The Exorcist is about hope.
I don't think so either. Last time I checked.
Is 2001: A Space Odyssey about humility?
It's all about humility. That's the main plot device of that film.
Now, Lord of the Rings, that's about hope.
Sure.
Yeah, but
It's about Levensies as well.
Alien, is that about hope? It's about survival.
It's about hopeful survival.
It's about humility.
It's about humility.
But yeah, that guy's a bozo.
I guess.
Big bozo.
Bozo. All right, Anthony. What is your streaming recommendation? Oh, wait, no, I got to do a review.
Yeah, what's the review, bro?
I'm so sorry.
How could you forget?
I forgot to read out a written review. So on Apple Podcasts, as you all know, you can leave a rating as well as leave a written review. And again, you don't have to have an iPhone or a Mac to do this. All you need is an email, and you can write whatever you want on our podcast.
Anything.
And we always read them out every episode. So Sart, exclamation point. Unsubscribed. Learning I technically work near Baxter Building from this podcast.
That's awesome.
Thanks for leaving that 5-star rating. and
LA.
review. That's very
LA
cool.
in the house.
That's the one downtown, right?
The Baxter Building, that's the Bradbury building that you're thinking of.
What's the Baxter Building?
I have no idea. I don't know.
It's in LA.
Yeah.
It's okay, I recognize this. We must have talked about it in an episode.
I think we mentioned East LA or something. Or we mentioned
The
store.
Baxter.
The Baxter. It's a building?
It's like a
It's a structure.
it's a structure.
Very cool.
It's on Baxter Street, believe it or not. Apartment building.
All right, what's your streaming rec?
28 weeks later,
Nice.
which is on Hulu, everybody.
Max just added the Dark Knight trilogy, so you can watch all of the Dark Knight trilogy movies on Max right now.
It wasn't on there?
They think they just had Batman Begins for a while. Now they're all on.
All right, let's get back into our episode of World War Z.
Yes.
And I want to talk about my favorite reference from the book real quick.
All right.
So, of course, it's not a very faithful book-to-film adaptation. And I read a quote from Max Brooks where he wanted to go into this movie. He wanted to hate it. He wanted to dislike the script. He wanted to dislike the characters because it wasn't his. And then he's like, I was sitting in the theater and I was like, I hate that I like this movie. I really am enjoying it, even though that's not what Gerry Lane would actually say. It's working. And then I realized that it's not my movie. I wrote the book and they're adapting a movie off the book.
Sure.
And I accepted that and he ended up really liking it. But it's obviously not really too much like the book. But there's a great reference to the book in the third act of the film when they are at the W.H.O facility. And so they're the sequence where they're about to go into the contaminated area that's full of zombies to get to that vault, right? And before they go across that bridge, the connecting tunnel, they have a couple weapons to choose from, and the doctors offer a baseball bat and an axe. And so Gerry takes and also a handgun. And Jerry's like, too loud. Gerry takes the axe, and then the soldier takes the baseball bat, but she also takes the gun. It's a really good joke.
Her name's Segan.
Yeah, Segan. It's really funny. Now, they're given that option of an axe and a baseball bat, and they are told there are merits to each. This is a joke, an in-joke reference to the section of the book, Zombies Survival Guide, which preceded World War Z.
That's the name of it. I couldn't think of.
Zombies Survival Guide, which discussed the weapons to use when fighting zombies. The book considers both options superior to the gun, which Sagan also takes as a backup.
I love that.
So really great reference to the lore of Max Brooks. And it does make sense. The gun's good, I think, because it's loud and it's sort of an instant kill if you get a headshot. But it makes more sense probably to take an axe or a bat. But we do see the problem that can arise from having an axe later on when Gerry attacks a zombie. It's working great until it's not. He kills that zombie in the hallway, and he goes in for a headshot kill with the axe. And then he's like, oh, okay, thank God, I killed that one. Then another zombie comes around the corner. He's like, oh, crap. So he's trying to take the axe out of the zombie's brain and its head, but it's stuck in there until it's close enough that he actually can finally pull it out.
That's a shot that they recropped for the PG-13 cut, where you don't see the axe in the brain, but you see the axe in the head in the unrated version.
Oh my God, I gotta rewatch this movie
They cropped
now.
that image, that whole sequence, so that you don't see him actually driving the axe in.
Oh man,
And he's just got black blood all over him.
black blood.
So let's get into post Philadelphia. He's on the naval boat, and he agrees to go on this mission. He's got no other choice to protect his family. He gets a cell phone, and then he says goodbye to his family. What I really like is they subverted the audience's expectations with the character of the young scientist Andrew Fastback, who Terry bills as like he's our best chance for finding a cure. This guy can be like the savior of humanity. He's the smartest scientist we have. He has a great theory, and we need to get him to patient zero, and he'll be able to cure this disease. And we're like, okay, cool. Gerry's gonna help out. He's basically gonna be assisting this guy Fastback. They have a bunch of Navy SEALs with them, and they get to South Korea.
Yeah, because they're trying to find, or who they believe is
Patient Zero.
Ground Zero.
Yes, so they're going to South Korea because there is an army outfit of American military men who sent an email with the word zombie in it that was ignored 10 days ago. And so they saw not Patient Zero, but maybe the guy that Patient Zero bit, which was a doctor in their area who went to inspect an injured man in the village who people thought were dead. He went to see if this guy really was dead, and that guy bit him, being an early zombie. And I like how, like, it was the early stages of the virus, maybe like one of the first or second people bit, they weren't like immediately zombified, and people thought he was dead. And so this guy was really just checking to see if he had a pulse, and the zombie part took over and bit the doctor. What I love about this sequence is they're setting it up with like a traditional story arc that you think you're expecting going into this film. Oh, there's a guy who knows how to make a cure. This is going to be the story. It's going to be Gerry and this scientist. They're going to be traveling around the world. They're going to find patient zero. They're going to find the cure. And then that's probably going to be the plot. But what happens? They're on the plane. Gerry gives them some advice. Just follow the SEALs. Do what they say. If you see something that interests you, just tell them to stop. They'll listen to you. And then they step out on the plane. It's raining. They're on the airfield. And then zombies show up, start attacking. Soldiers start firing. And then Fastback, the scientist, the best bet for humanity, panics, runs up the catwalk of the plane, slips, and shoots himself in the head. And you're like, oh my God, what? I remember the first time I saw this, I was like, oh, what? This is the guy. That was the guy. He was supposed to do it.
After that great speech about Mother Nature being a bitch.
Yeah, exactly. Like, this was supposed to be the guy. And then it's like, I think that's a great moment of the film where it completely takes the story in a different direction than we were expecting. And it puts Gerry into this moment of like, now what do I do? Now how am I going to solve this thing? This guy was supposed to cure humanity, and he's dead. I thought that was it's one of my favorite moments of the film. It's very smart story-wise.
It's shocking and very jarring, just like the opening is. And it's really exciting because it sort of just puts Gerry into the position of, I'm the best hope for humanity, I guess, which is a very Hollywood thing to do, just put your main character to save the world, which he's not exactly saving the world, but he's trying to figure out how they can start to save the world, how to fight back, really. That's sort of like the main motivational that it becomes, where he's not trying to find a cure anymore or trying to stop it. He still is, but he's also trying to find a way just to fight back.
Survive.
I'm a lead bomber, motherfucker. But shocking. And then we meet a really interesting character in the South Korean sequence, which is great, played by David Morse. And he's just an ex-CIA officer who is in prison there, who spent time in North Korea. And
I also love James Badge-Dale. He's great in this.
Yeah, he's really good. So this ex-CIA officer is really fascinating. He's telling this story about who Patient Zero is, how different countries are doing, because he has more information. He's been on the ground longer. And he has no teeth. And he gets into that really interesting story about how North Korea is doing and how they're doing great. And it's not affecting them at all. Because what they did, their leader at the time, he pulled the teeth of all 26 million North Koreans in less than 24 hours, which at first you're like, that's bullshit. And then he's like, dude, this is North Korea. North Korea is an insane totalitarian regime. If they want to do that, they probably could pull it off. And it's just so fascinating, and it's actually really clever. And he says, no bites, no spread. And it's just interesting that you have to be bitten to get the spread, because even Gerry gets blood in his mouth earlier in the film when he's running up the stairwell with his family to get to the rooftop. There's that great moment on the roof before he goes to make sure his family's okay. He gets through the door, and he immediately runs to the edge of the roof of the apartment building because he's ready to jump off just in case he feels himself starting to turn. He's counting to 12 in his head. And it's great because it shows that there's really only one way to get that, and that's through a bite. Whereas other zombie movies, like 28 Days Later, you can get the infection if you just get blood inside an orifice, like Brendan Gleeson gets blood in his eye from the crow eating the dead body on the tower above his head. So I think that's a really cool sequence, and it just adds so much to this crazy lore of North Korea just pulling the teeth of every citizen in the country.
And in the unrated cut, he pulls his last tooth out. Remember?
Oh, yeah.
He pulls his last tooth out and places it on the little table where the rest of his teeth were. And it's a great moment.
And what's really interesting about that, it's not that he's trying to prevent himself from getting killed, but he's trying to prevent himself from infecting anyone else.
Yeah.
So it's a drastic measure, but at the same time, it's very honorable in a lot of ways and crazy in a lot of ways to be able to do that to yourself. But from his perspective, the best way to stop the spread is to just prevent it from even happening by pulling teeth.
And he's the one who tells Gerry, go to Jerusalem and find this government official who really was the spearhead for helping defend the city of Jerusalem.
Jürgen Warmbrunn.
Yeah, Jürgen. And that's where Jerry's like, okay, I need you guys to take me to Jerusalem. And we get the great excavation. I mean, the exodus from South Korea. Karen calls when they're doing silent bike riding.
Oh, man, that is such a great scene because these zombies can obviously see, but they enter a sort of docile, sleep-like state when they don't have a lot of stimulus. And they even talk about that with the doctors later on. The zombies that have just taken over the laboratories of the W.H.O. building, they're just standing around, and Jerry's like, why are they standing so still? And they're like, oh, they're waiting for stimulus. They're just chilling. They're in screensaver mode right now. So unless they
Windows 97 mode right now.
So I like how the zombies are, and they're called Zeke by the soldiers. They're often treated like a virus, like it's awaiting stimulus or something. And I think it's really fascinating. And so the sequence where they have to refuel their plane to get out of there because they're going to go to Jerusalem now is so terrifying because he's like, we can get you out of here, but we're going to get you out of here quiet. And so they got these little squeaky bicycles. It's raining outside. It's pitch black. And the soldiers are all just lining up the roofs, and they're like, let's get headshots. And I love how they're talking on the radio, and the audience can hear it, too, at the same time, as well as the sort of sarcastic attitude that they have about the whole thing in general. And the squeaky bikes going down the hill. Then that phone call comes in. Oh, my God.
Turn that off.
When she starts to pull the cell phone out, and she's just cuddling with the driver. Like, oh, let's see what Jerry's up to.
Oh, he must be busy.
It's crazy. But it's an awesome sequence, man. And I like how it's just in pitch black, basically. And
they take off with zombies inside the hull of the aircraft.
Basically, yeah.
Leaving the door open for them to fall out.
Yeah, but even it shows also the futility of maybe that it's futile to fight back for a lot of people because the leader of the team down there, he gets killed.
Yeah.
And he ends up taking himself out.
He's like, don't worry, boys, I got this.
It felt like a Call of Duty campaign
I think that's
story.
what they went with the dialogue.
Yeah.
He felt like a Call of Duty character.
All right, don't worry, boys. I'll handle it.
And honestly, I fucking love it.
It was great,
I love
man.
him I love James Badge Dale in this movie. It's
fucking
kind of corny, but in a good way.
What else is he in?
He's in a bunch of stuff. James Badge Dale, you've seen him in a shit ton of movies.
James Badgedale. Let me see his
you've
face.
seen him in a ton of movies.
Oh, yeah, that mustache. Let's see. He's been in, The Pacific I've seen. What else? Lord of the Flies. Oh, he's in Shame. Only the Brave. I think that's where I know him most from, probably.
Yeah.
That's a recent movie. The Lone Ranger. Oh, Iron Man 3. The Gray. He's in the Gray.
Yeah.
Okay, so he's
the commander of the army forces.
No, yeah, I
in
know.
the base, yeah.
I'm trying to remember. In the Gray, he's the asshole douchebag guy. No, that's Frank Grillo.
Yeah. I don't think he's in the Gray, is he?
He's in the Gray, yeah. Okay, he's the guy with the long hair and the goatee.
Oh yeah.
Because I just watched that movie.
He's a solid actor.
a couple months ago.
He's really good.
Man, The Grey is such a good movie.
I love The Grey.
Man, I watched it just randomly like 2 months ago. Such a good time.
He's also in the Benghazi movie with Krasinski. Yeah, he's good in this movie. He's very good.
Good jawline.
But anyways, now's Jerusalem, which is obviously a highlight of the film, where we get a lot of exposition from Jorgen, the official.
Yep.
So this is actually a real thing that they have in that government, where he says it's the 10th man, where when 9 members of their intelligence committee come up to the same conclusion, it's up to the 10th man to contradict them. It's their duty to contradict them. And that's why when they got the email about zombies, 9 of them agreed this is ridiculous. We're not going to pursue this. The 10th man, him in this case, was compelled to say, what if it's true? What do we do? And that's why they built the walls up, finished a bunch of the walls that were unfinished just in time for the outbreak to hit globally. This is actually a real intelligence directorate that does indeed have what's called a devil's advocate office to explore all alternate assumptions in worst-case scenarios so that intelligence assessments don't fall victim to groupthink. It's not called the 10th man in reality, but it's a fun name for the movie for it.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, too, especially, you know, he brings up how we didn't think that Germany was going to come in and take us over. We didn't think that this would happen. We didn't think the Holocaust would happen. We didn't think that would happen. And they sort of have
the Olympics.
Yes, the Munich Olympic assassinations. They sort of created this organization to prevent the groupthink because they've always looked on the brighter side, but now it's time to actually take a chance and actually look at something from a different perspective. And they get a radio transmission where somebody said the word zombie, right?
Yes,
and so,
from
Russia. And nobody took it seriously except for this guy in Jerusalem, Jorgen. He's like, you know what? I'm going to be the 10th vote, and we're going to take this one seriously. And at the same time that this all goes down, the zombie outbreak, Jerusalem, they quickly start to build a wall that they've been working on for thousands of years, but they finally finish it like 2 days before the outbreak, the global outbreak starts. And it's a really interesting sequence of events because we think we're safe. Mm-hmm. You know, we're with Gerry, we're with who we eventually find his sort of guide. Sagan becomes his military guide throughout the city of Jerusalem, and they think they're all right. And what I like about this, it's similar to the earlier sequence with the biologist, the doctor, where he gets shot and the hope's gone immediately. Jorgen's like, I don't have an answer for you. There's no cure to this. The only thing I can do is send you in a different direction. But really, there's no cure to this. And I don't know what else to tell you. You basically came here for nothing. And it's a great sequence because we see these walls. They're so high. And we also see outside the walls of Jerusalem that there are zombies everywhere. But obviously the walls are 80 feet tall, 100 feet tall of cement. So they can't get there. And then we see sort of that tunnel that's fenced off on the outside of refugees coming into the city of Jerusalem from all over. And they're accepting refugees from everywhere.
And it makes sense because he says the more humans we save, the less zombies we have to fight.
Yeah, Gerry's like, you're letting people in? He's like, yeah, it's less zombies to kill.
Yeah, it makes total sense. But then obviously, once we get the important exposition that we need, and then he sets Gerry off on his mission to go to India, which is actually funny because he says the line, India is a black hole, because Gerry wants to go there. He's like, how do I get to India? India's a black hole. That's a reshoot too, because they originally had it as, how do I get to Russia? And then Jorgen says, Russia's a black hole. So even that's a change. Because originally from here, it was supposed to be South Korea, Jerusalem, Russia.
It must be so annoying to logistically have to redo so much stuff just for like a couple of lines of dialogue.
Just for one random line. So in this case, the reshoot was South Korea, Jerusalem, and then plane crash.
Yeah.
But they're going towards India, or trying to go towards India.
And the Jerusalem sequence is insane because people are celebrating, they're happy, different cultures are coming together, they're surviving together despite their differences, and they're celebrating, they're making noise, they're singing and dancing. That girl turns on the speaker and starts to sing into it. They're making a lot of noise. And Gerry, he's like you said, he's not a superhuman Rambo kind of guy, but he's very intelligent. He's aware of his surroundings at all times. Like the story, like he's taking into account all these different clues because the doctor said to always look at the clues, and often what you think is the most brutal component of a virus or an outbreak is often its biggest weakness, which comes into play later on in the third act of the film. But like for example, the first clues he learns from an ex-CIA agent is there's that person who they believe didn't get bit and was completely ignored, but no one has proof of it. Remember, inside the cell, and then we have here recognizing that there's too much noise going on, and he anticipates what's about to happen before anyone else does. And then outside the Jerusalem walls, one of the most shocking images I've ever seen in a zombie movie, if not the best and the coolest thing ever. And this was part of the trailer, and this trailer slapped.
Oh, yeah.
When this trailer came out in 2012, 2013, before the release, this sequence looked incredible. The zombies, like you said, acting like those ants, just climbing on top of each other to reach great heights and reach the heights of the walls of Jerusalem and just piling over and just jumping into the city to just kill everything they see.
Attack on Titan style. That's what I thought of when I watched this sequence the other night.
It's so sick, and as soon as that first zombie gets over, you know it's
done.
over. The city's over. The city's going to be taken over.
And they just all drop and land, and then it's so quickly how overrun they get. And just the imagery of like helicopter machine gun trying to take out these huge swarms of zombies that have reached heights of at least 80 feet up to the walls. It's unbelievable.
It was like the Sentinels in Matrix.
The
Matrix Revolutions.
It's like the ants in Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
Yeah.
It's just like those
You can
guys.
kill some with bullets, but it's not going to do much in the grand scheme of things.
Man.
And what I like so much about the Jerusalem sequence is there's a lot of traveling and avoiding of the zombies, but we get the close quarters look at what hordes and waves of zombies are looking like. So many people get killed, and there's some great sequences when they're running away from the zombies, and then they make it and avoid waves of them.
Mm-hmm.
But other people, they try to pack into doors inside of buildings. As soon as they go in, it's literally like a wave of water, a wave of zombies just crashes, and the sound design's so great in this film. It makes you feel like you're inside those buildings that are being attacked by zombies.
Yeah, I really like one of the money shots is the camera pullback of one of the roads in the town. And like you said, it's like a wave of zombies just pouring downwards. And yes, there's a ton of CGI in this film, but a lot of zombies, especially with the close quarters here, it's actually real actors and stunt performers. And they filmed them with green screens behind them in post-production, and then they CGI'd them into moments like these. And then they compounded them and layered them together. So some of the zombies you see are actually real people. There is so much CGI, but you'd be surprised how much was actually done, and then they composited them into the scenes here.
And we talked about the amputation briefly earlier, but it's such a crazy sequence of events that go on. He's with Sagan and another soldier, and they're protecting him. They kind of clear out this little intersection of tunnels with grenades, and then she removes her glove and realizes she's been bit. And Gerry, just out of pure instinct, just takes her machete and cuts her hand off. And do they show it in the unrated version?
Well, okay, she's not wearing a glove.
Or what is it?
And it's not a machete.
It's a big knife.
It's a big knife.
It's kind of a machete. It's like Blade's machete.
It's a military tactical knife.
It's a big knife.
It is a huge knife. So in the unrated version, so in the PG-13 version, he cuts it off and you see the stump a little bit, but they just CGI'd so it's like a black flat.
Yeah, but I'm talking
top.
about the cut because they show it off screen.
They show they cut away as he's cutting it. They didn't show him like actually severing it, because I'm not sure. I'm sure they tried to film it that way, but in the unrated cut, it does cut away because maybe it wouldn't make that knife might need another shot at cutting her bone.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
It sounded good.
But in the unrated cut, you do see the blood squirting out. In what do you call it? Like your heartbeat's pushing it.
Pulse.
A pulse. It's pulsating out, which is really cool. And then he just wraps it up as the blood's still pulsating out. So it's very bloody. But in the PG-13 one, it's just like a red stump of like bright red. And it's like, that does not look good.
Yeah, and it's covered up so quickly that you barely even get a good glimpse at it.
And then getting away, it's fantastic. They're running through the city, and they see his pilot took off because he wouldn't really call him a coward, but he's like, I'm getting the fuck out of here.
I mean, he waited as long as he could, honestly.
He's like, fuck Gerry.
The zombies, the Zeeks are already overtaking the airport.
Exactly. Although, ironically, he's probably dead after this. Wherever he lands, he's probably not going to make it. Maybe he will make it. But they managed to overtake a commercial airliner as it's taking off. The soldiers that Gerry's with hold it at gunpoint, and then they're like, okay, the pilots throw down their ladder and bring them up. And then we get the great plane sequence. But I really love this sequence. It's incredible. It's absolutely just like a 10-minute showstopper for the film.
It's really cool to see that, the imagery of someone holding a plane at gunpoint.
Yeah.
And not like a little private jet or a little plane, but an actual commercial like plane, like a Boeing
Yeah.
747 or something. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I think it's a lot of fun. But yeah, Jerusalem's intense, man, and it really is one of the best parts of the film, and it's very exciting. But the plane sequence,
The plane's awesome, man. Zombies on a plane.
What's so cool about it is, again, you're sort of in this false sense of security. They do this like 3 times in this movie.
They do a good job with it.
You know, we've all been on planes. We know how, everyone, even just going on a plane. I can't remember what bit I was watching recently, but talked about how flying, everyone's just got that weird tension where like, I could die today. But obviously they figured it out. But everyone's sort of tense on planes in general when they go through the airport. And so everyone's freaking out because they just got on this plane. They just escaped the zombie apocalypse for now. And everyone's like trying to find their seats. Everyone's freaking the F out. They take off as the zombies are running on the runway on the tarmac.
I love how the stewardess is still doing her job.
And
like,
then,
you do not have to serve people anymore.
Yeah, and
it's
then,
past that.
And then they sort of all just are chilling. And then it cuts to later on, and they're all just like, they just woke up from a nap, and they got the same sound effects, and it's very calm. It's no turbulence on this flight. Also, Gerry does the quick fix for the changing the bandages on Sagan's arm in her forearm, which was, I've never seen someone drink vodka like that. The little nips.
Yeah.
I'd be chugging those.
Yeah.
I'd be chugging those.
I'd be putting it down.
Chugging them. And I think that's a great sequence, and they really built a lot of trust with each other and just these short things that they've done together. Mm-hmm. But the false sense of security, thinking you're on a plane, everything's going to be okay. The pilots are redirecting them to the coordinates, and they find out they're going to the closest W.H.O. building, which is in the UK, correct?
Yes, it's in Wales.
It's in Wales, the closest WHO facility that's not overrun by zombies. And so they're redirected the audience, so you're like, oh, everything's going to be cool. Until that stewardess opens up a goddamn bathroom door.
No, it's the elevator to downstairs.
That's an elevator?
Yeah, it's like not a bathroom door. It's like a little, like a little elevator for like restaurants use it and airplanes use it.
Oh, like
to bring
for food?
Yeah, to bring
in
things
hotels?
Up. Yeah,
Gotcha.
that's what it is.
Oh.
Yeah, so I always look at it. They don't show it, but I look at it as the zombie maybe grabbed one of the legs.
Yeah, probably.
And climbed up under the undercarriage of the plane.
That's the only thing that makes sense for me is while it was on the runway, it came up on one of those.
I saw a lot of confusion online. It is a quick shot. I don't think it's a bathroom. I'm pretty sure she's doing the elevator up.
Okay.
And it came from there. That's my guess.
Okay, that makes sense.
Or maybe it is a bathroom, but I always looked at it as like the elevator.
It probably has to be from the lower deck because someone would have noticed that a zombie was like, why would the zombie go into the bathroom?
The only way
you turn so quickly.
Yeah, someone got bit and ran into the bathroom. And
you ran directly
closed
to
the door.
take a shit.
Yeah.
Like,
and also, if it was a bathroom, it'd be making a ton of noise. So it has to have been like from the undercarriage where nobody heard it for 6 hours.
He's absolutely right, everybody.
He's absolutely right.
People don't buy that. I mean, Catch Me If You Can, he just uses a coin to get out of the plane through the bathroom.
I love that.
Through the lower...
Frank! Hey, you want to split that? Can I get half of that eclair?
I'll tell you how'd you pass the bar?
I'll tell you how I passed the bar if you give me half that eclair.
He shoves the whole thing in his mouth.
I'm going to figure it out. I'll figure it out.
We're always talking on Christmas.
And ready.
Forgot your wallet.
Forgot your wallet.
But again, we talked about the grenade explosion earlier.
I love it, man. Well, first of all, they start to hear the commotion in the back, and this is like Train to Busan intense, close quarters, zombies going nuts, and then Gerry hears it and he looks through the curtain. He's like, "Fuck." Then they close the curtain. They set up a bunch of suitcases.
What do you think about that plan on the suitcases?
Well, the suitcases is a way of, because they're not intelligent, as long as they don't make any noise, they're not going to try to break through. If there's like a surface in front of them, they're not going to push through that.
Yeah.
If they don't think anything's behind it, so it makes sense. I didn't like it when I remember first seeing the film. I was like, that's so dumb. But now, in retrospect, based upon how the zombies operate, if no one's making a sound back there, the zombies wouldn't know anyone was back there. Once they touch the surface of the suitcases, they'll not pursue it.
And anyways, if you're in that situation,
that's the only option you have.
What else are you gonna do?
There's nothing else to do.
Like, you'll take whatever's around to sort of block anything.
Yeah.
And so it makes sense to me. It's always like, oh, that's not gonna work, but at the same time, it's the only option.
Yeah, 100%.
They're on a plane with zombies. No option is a good option.
Exactly.
That's the thing. There are no outs of this. You might, like I said,
might as well use those fucking suitcases.
Yeah. And so, and that's the thing. Same thing with the grenade, where it's like, we're probably going to die.
Yes.
We're definitely going to die. 100% become zombies in 10 seconds. But if we throw this grenade, or if I throw this grenade, we're maybe 98% chance of dying, 2% chance of survival. You know, I might survive this plane crash. It's possible. I wonder if Gerry killed any non-zombie humans when he did that.
Oh, he had to have.
I mean, the pilots are
They
dead.
were bound to die anyways.
Yeah, so Gerry actually killed a bunch of humans.
I will say the pilots would have survived because they have the ladder in their cockpit. They could have gotten out. If they landed the plane with a plane full of zombies,
Oh, yeah, you're right.
they could have landed the plane and taken that ladder down.
That's right. So Gerry
Killed them.
killed he killed a bunch of people in the cabin, but he also, the pilots could have survived.
Everyone in the plane would have died, but the cabin would have been safe still for the pilots. So he killed the pilots unnecessarily.
Wow, I never thought about it like that.
Yes.
The pilot,
And they made the right decision of going to help save the world, too. So they were like stand-up guys who were nothing but innocent heroes.
wow, Gerry
killed
just
them.
straight up killed them.
But the plane crash is great. I love it. We've all seen plane crashes before. There's not really much you can do differently. And Zemeckis did it the best of anyone, really. That being said,
Castaway.
Castaway, oh, yeah, Castaway and Flight.
Okay, you're right.
Both of them.
Well, Flight, there's no crash.
Yeah, it crashes. He
No,
stops. Yeah, it crashes.
He saves it.
From destruction,
Oh, well, you said crash.
the plane crashes in Flight.
Well, oh, I think I'm getting mixed up with Sully. So in Flight, he flips it upside down, right?
Yes.
And then does it land upside down? I'm
No,
trying to
so
remember.
in Flight, they completely lose hydraulics.
Yeah.
And an engine goes out.
And so he
flips it. He inverts it.
He inverts the plane.
Because they were on a nosedive.
Yeah.
And so he inverts it to even it out. And then,
so it becomes horizontal again?
yes, and then he reverts it and glides it down. And remember, they're approaching a grassy farmland, and one of the wings hits the top of a church.
Oh, yeah.
And then it crash lands. And then he's under investigation because the plane crashed. Of how he operated during the plane crash.
That's right, yeah.
So the plane crashes in Flight.
But everyone survived.
Everyone survived, but
Yeah.
it's also right up there with Castaway as being one of the most exciting plane crashes ever.
Yeah,
in
I've only seen that
movies.
movie once in
Very
theaters.
good, very good movie.
That was a good flick.
Yeah,
That was a really good flick.
It's a good flick, man.
Oh, it's awesome. Denzel's so freaking good in that movie. But yeah, and then slowly he lands it on the water.
on the water,
so
yes.
it doesn't
in the
it's
harbor.
technically a crash landing, but
Yes.
it's pretty safe landing.
Yeah. So, but yeah, the plane absolutely crashes and gets torn up in Flight.
Okay, but Castaway I think is the best plane
Yes,
crash.
but I agree.
It's
Best.
so good.
But this is a pretty good one. It does cut away, but we do get to see like the nose of the plane completely severed and then roll out.
Yeah, I really like the physics of
Yeah.
that.
Of it, like all the time you see planes like kind of maintain their structure, but in this one, like seeing the nose just break apart is really cool.
I mean, you got to be coming in at least like 250 miles per hour.
and you're very
like
heavy,
300 kilometers
very
per hour.
heavy.
Super heavy, and just not landing perfectly straight on not on perfectly flat ground. It makes a lot of sense that I wonder if they did research if that's what would actually happen. But it
I'm
makes
sure,
sense.
yeah.
It makes sense to me.
And then what I like is when we cut back to Gerry, he's awake, he's strapped into his seat
After murdering people.
after killing the pilots. Sagan's gone, but then he has like a huge piece of metal stuck in his hip, and I like every movie character pulls out whatever piece of metal stuck in them. He tries to, but he can't. But I'm like, thank God, because he would have bled out if he did.
Yeah.
It was kind of like, I feel like his character, that's the only time his character behaved abnormally of trying to pull it out, because he would know that he would die. Maybe that's just like instinct. When
Maybe
you
it's
feel
for
that
the
pain.
audience too.
Yeah.
If that happened to me, I'd probably be like, "This is the most painful thing that I'll ever experience in my entire life." But also, it's holding
Keeping
the
me
blood
alive. Yeah.
for the most part.
But then Sagan shows up and saves him.
I like how there's a zombie strapped into a seatbelt in a chair that's
Yeah.
like, I mean, I feel like he should have killed that zombie because if it gets loose, it's just going to wreak havoc on the UK.
Oh, true.
Because they're walking through this town and there's no zombies there, so they brought zombies to the UK.
He should have killed it. You're right.
So there already are zombies, but
Well, I'm sure there are a bunch of zombies all over because the WHO people are locked in.
yeah, but there's
They're not
people in their
leaving.
neighborhoods just hiding in their houses, and it
True.
seems like it's not as bad of an outbreak if there even is an
So
outbreak.
not only did he kill the pilots, but he caused a new outbreak in
the
Wales.
UK, yeah.
Yeah.
So he kind of just he's not as great of a hero as you think he is. when you look at the facts, he murdered not just the pilots but everyone who wasn't turned yet on the plane, even though they were gonna die.
They were doomed.
He still killed them before they were doomed.
He did.
He did kill them,
But he saved them the fate of becoming a zombie.
but he didn't do that for the UK.
No.
He doomed the UK because I'm not even sure if there's even an outbreak in the UK.
Yes, there is.
Is there?
The WHO people have been living there.
No, but I mean the rest of the country.
Yeah.
But where are they?
The zombies have probably just moved on to wherever they can find people.
Gotcha.
'Cause
Yeah, I guess so.
the hordes of zombies are constantly moving for people to infect.
But this town, it's fine. There's no destruction.
Not fine. Well, yeah,
There's like a parked car with like milk on it. That's it.
it's not fine. Everyone's holed up in their homes.
Yeah, it seems okay. It's not bad.
But zombies were there.
Maybe not.
Absolutely.
If not, they're definitely there now.
Yes, for sure.
Like Gerry should have killed them. This is a part of the movie that I don't love, is where they just survived a plane crash, right?
The walking?
And then Jerry's got this giant 2-foot piece of metal in his abdomen poking through the back, and he walks who knows how far. Like, what are the odds
Pretty
that
long
the
walk.
WHO is less than a mile from the airport? Probably pretty low. They couldn't hijack a car, or Jesus,
Pretty long walk.
like fucking A. There's no way he would have survived that.
Honestly, I don't really. He survived a plane crash. You gotta. Come on, man.
I know.
He just survived that plane crash, like being the one seat that didn't get destroyed.
Yeah, their row is fine.
Yeah, the row is fine.
Every other row is
Just
fucked.
accept. After that, like, he's gonna survive. All right. There's the thing about this movie. You know he's gonna survive. So once
true.
you accept that, and you're like, okay, let's see what's gonna happen.
Well, I mean, you don't completely know. Like, the third act is so goddamn good.
I watched this movie. I never felt that Gerry was at risk of dying.
Yeah, I guess so.
They're not gonna kill Brad Pitt in their movie. Here's the thing. That's okay. It's okay.
Yeah, especially because they were planning a trilogy.
Yeah, if you know that your character, if you kind of know how a movie will end, it happens sometimes. You know how a movie will end. You know, we watch a comic book movie. You know, the hero is probably gonna defeat the villain, but it's about the journey along the way.
Yeah.
When you watch Kill Bill, you know she's gonna kill Bill. You know it's gonna happen. But that doesn't matter. The audience knows this story's going to end with her killing Bill.
It's literally the title.
That's the title. But it's the journey along the way. It's the story that people love. So it's okay sometimes where you know a character is going to survive, or you know something is going to happen at the end of the movie. But it's okay because it's all about the journey.
It's all about the journey, man.
It's all about the journey.
The journey. Well, now their journey's led to the W.H.O. facility in Wales, and Gerry wakes up, 3 days later, unconscious,
Yeah.
in a lot of pain.
How long have I been out?
Strapped to a bed.
And the doctor's there.
The doctor.
Am I dreaming?
Peter Capaldi. This was part of the reshoots.
Yep. All of this was the reshoots.
So the WHO was all part of the reshoots.
The first cut of the film, the plane did not crash. It landed in Russia. That was the first cut of the film.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
They landed in Russia after Jerusalem.
Yeah. I really like the WHO sequence. I think it's
think it
really
works.
creative and really terrifying, and made me feel like I was watching Resident Evil.
It gave you the close quarters sneaking around in zombie movies that it never had in the first hour and a half of the film.
Exactly, that's right. That's a
So
good
it
point.
brought that element to the zombie genre that you always expect in zombie movies to the film that it didn't have.
They had the sneaking around in the apartment, but that's
Kind
not
of,
when the zombies were in the same hallway as them, and
Yeah.
they really made noise so quickly that the zombies came upon them. But
Yeah.
to spend about 5-6 minutes to stealthily walk around the laboratory is
Yeah.
so cool to watch.
And honestly, I really like the WHO sequence too, and I do like how it contrasts the huge epicness of the previous sequences, and we get something much smaller in scale and more intimate. And I like the idea. I think when I was younger, I thought that the idea of infecting people was cheesy, but then you realize, they're alluding to these zombies being more animalistic and mindless, but having still great sensory, having great senses for what they're pursuing and what they're hunting. And it is true in nature that predators will not attack prey that are sick or injured already. So for me, I was like, now I'm at this point where I like it. I think it works. It's an interesting solve. It's not a cure, but it's an interesting solve for the story. And also, you got to keep in mind, the studio in this movie was backed into a corner, and they had to figure out a way to make this work. And for me, I think it works.
It's camouflage. It's camouflage. It's a really good idea. But this whole sequence is so suspenseful.
Yeah, it is.
It's really well made. It's really well directed. And I love the environment they're in. It's so sterile but destroyed at the same time. And I like how these scientists who work there, they probably have been sleeping there and living there ever since the outbreak. And they're probably trying to help, but they're at a loss of what to do. They probably have thought about every kind of possibility to try to develop a cure, try to develop a vaccine, try to study the virus as much as they can. They've captured one of the zombies and they're studying it, one of their old employees, one of their own colleagues. And I like how they just seem to be stuck. And also they're not trusting of any outsiders because they probably heard stories of what's going on outside of this beautiful country of Wales that doesn't seem to be affected by zombies until Gerry brought a zombie on an airplane to destroy their whole country.
He's worse than the zombies.
He's kind of worse than the zombies. So I like how these brilliant people are just, they don't know what to do until Gerry shows up. And they get on the phone with Terry, and he sets them straight. And Gerry's plan's really interesting because, like I said, the doctor gave him that speech, that very forced monologue, which was interesting but came out of nowhere. They're like, "How do you feel about this?" "Oh, Mother Nature's a bitch. Blah 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 blah. You gotta look for the clues." If I was Gerry, I'd be like, "No one asked, bro."
The chips in her armor. She loves to leave breadcrumbs. I feel like that was part of the reshoots.
I think so too.
To get the audience up to speed with what it was gonna be.
And so Gerry's sort of been
I like the monologue.
keeping track of all these clues, and the clues are the person in the prison cell that the zombies didn't go after, the story from the ex-CIA agent, the two people in Jerusalem, the young boy with the shaved head who you can assume was going through chemotherapy, probably had cancer. The zombies went right around him, as well as the elderly man who probably had some sort of disease or ailment, or was just maybe on his deathbed, weak to go after.
She's so old.
Just too old.
You can't take her house. She's too old. Look at her.
She's too old.
Back-to-back Happy Gilmore episode references.
And the zombies run right around him, and he's just replaying the things the doctor said. Look for the clues. Then you find out the most brutal nature of the virus is often its biggest weakness. And that's the weakness right there, is how brutal it is and how it'll go after everything until it doesn't go after something that's unhealthy.
When you realize what it won't go after. It's so ruthless and aggressive, but when you figure out what it won't want to pursue, then that's the weakness.
And it's clever. And so obviously
it works.
I like how he's like, "Do you have any infectious diseases?" They're like, "What for?"
It's bad enough here already, man.
But I like how they don't understand exactly, because what he pitches to them is so absurd. They're like, "Oh, we've already tried infecting zombies. Like, you can't. It doesn't do anything because they are dead. There's nothing to do." So that's the dialogue to show that they're dead. We've already tried everything. You can't infect a dead being because a pathogen, a virus, needs a healthy, living host. But they're not living, so nothing will take to them. He's like, "Nah, motherfucker, I'm going to put it inside me." Well, it's not his plan to put it inside himself, but that's the plan. He's like, "What if we inject ourselves?" He's like, I have a theory that these zombies are not attracted to unhealthy persons."
They are, yeah. That's a good point. And it's a great sequence. Like we talked about, sneaking. Gollum.
I wasn't sneaking.
What were you doing?
I always think these fat hobbits always so mean.
All right. What was it you were up to anyways?
Sneaking.
Sneaking. I love the sequence. It works really well. It's scary. It's suspenseful. And I like how Gerry gets stuck, and it's up to him to solve it. And another, just putting conflicts in your character's way. Not only does he get stuck in that room with a zombie outside of him, he doesn't have his weapon, and also he has no way of figuring out what each virus is.
Yes.
What each bottle is.
The axe, though, man. Every time I watch this movie, they spend 4 seconds watching him put the axe outside the door. I'm like, "What are you doing? There are zombies everywhere, Gerry. You left the fucking door open." What are you doing?
Gerry!
What's the deal with the axe outside the vault, Gerry? It's ludicrous, of course. It's plot so that he's just faced with, I have to open this door. I can't defend myself in case this doesn't work. It's so that he injects himself. I get it. But still at the same time, it's just like, what are you doing?
But also, it's just like, that's a baller move, man. Injecting yourself and then facing the zombie. It's sick.
It's really sick. Cool, and I like the security cam footage. They can't communicate him. They can't tell him what to take. He only writes, "Tell my family I love them."
They could have figured out a communication system. I would have written, because he says, "Tell my family I love them." I would have been like, "I'm going to hold up a vial and then call the phone if I should not use it." If it's bad. He holds one up, they call, and the ring tells him not to do it.
Yeah, they could have done that.
And then when he gets to one and they don't call, then he can write, "Is this the one?" That's the one. It is, and then they can call it for yes.
They could have figured something
They
out.
could have figured something out.
They could have. The plot less exciting.
It's still cool. It's because it's all about the moment of Gerry after injecting himself and then facing the zombie, like head on, ready to die.
Imagine if he was like, "Don't let my wife see my phone.
Burn my phone.
Destroy my hard
Burn
drives."
it. Burn it.
Yeah, it is one of those moments. Like I always think that too. Like they could have just called him.
Yeah, they could have figured something
It's
out.
like some sort of system.
Yeah, they did it in The Martian. He was on Mars.
Yeah, he's on fucking Mars, and they have satellite photos. And they fucking figured it out. Mark Watney, Tony Stark built this in a cave with nothing but scraps
Mark Watney communicated with NASA with nothing but rocks.
on Mars.
They did it in The Martian.
That's a good point. He has a great system in The Martian. It was a very slow system, but it's great.
Once
work.
they got it going, they could text, obviously,
Yeah.
but the first communications.
I really liked how he set up all the letters around in a circle with the camera.
Oh, yeah, that was great.
What the? Shut the fuck up! Like they could have done something. Jerry could have figured.
I'm sorry. You sound like an 8-year-old reviewing
It's
the film.
really clever.
I like when they set it up the cameras like a circle around Mark.
It's not what I said. It's a main plot point of the film.
It is.
It establishes communication, motherfucker.
I know. I'm just saying the way you described it was like a child.
It was not like a child.
I like circles.
I enjoy the sequence of events where Mark Watney, using his clever mind, the only way to show the difference in distance between letters. You can't put it on a sheet. You have to space them out. So he measures out a perfect circle around the drone, around the camera, and from each point he puts up a post with a letter, and these letters signify spelling out words. So it's really sophisticated.
And it's not even using the whole alphabet.
Yes.
Only like 18 letters they used because that's all they could use for space. I really like how they did that.
Is that better for you, Anthony? I like how they made a circle of letters.
Thank you. That's how you said it. You just literally said, "I like how they did that."
Well, the whole. I like popcorn.
This is why people listen to us, because you say things like that.
You say shit like that all the time too, man. Don't act like you're just like the most intelligent,
I'm not.
well-spoken human being to ever grace this
No,
podcast.
I'm not, definitely not.
You're not even top 3.
Okay, is that even a ridicule at all, or?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not the 4th smartest person alive.
No, on the podcast.
Oh, on the podcast. Oh, that's a good joke.
Yeah, that's been on the podcast.
joke.
You're not even top 3.
All right. He gets out. Zombie Dave walks right past him. Then he gets trapped again.
Zombie Dave, is that the zombie's name?
Poor Zombie Dave gets trapped in the vault. He's like, "Oh, where do I go?" Great moment.
Totally different zombie, though.
Yeah, totally different zombie.
But it looked great. I thought the practical effects were great on the zombie. The makeup was really terrific. And again, but it's just that inconsistency in the tone, the continuity issue of that's not the kind of zombie we were really encountering the rest of the movie. So besides that, though, I like how his flesh is being decomposed. He's probably been turned for a while, but it works. It's exciting.
Yeah.
Like I said, the face-on-face shot was really exciting.
Oh yeah, get that face on that face. And then he walks away with a nice can of Pepsi. A little product placement.
Imagine how good that must have tasted.
That must have been great.
At first, I was like, "Oh, I'd be drinking a Pepsi
I would drink
too,
that
bro."
too. I would have done I know when people complain about product placement, I would be like, I would absolutely drink that too.
Fuck yeah, you
I've
just
been through hell.
survived. Maybe you survived a theory facing a zombie face on. It's terrifying.
Would a Coke have been better? Yes. Pepsi's still good.
Pepsi's pretty good.
Yeah.
We should do the Pepsi challenge sometime.
Okay.
Do you like Coke better than Pepsi?
Yes.
I think I do too, but maybe I don't know if we could pass the Pepsi challenge. I wonder.
Let's try it, man.
We should do that on like the next Letterboxd episode.
Without them seeing it?
Oh yeah, you're right.
It should
never
be a
mind.
video episode.
Next movie
We'll do
news.
Yeah. Pepsi challenge.
Pepsi challenge intermission.
The cool trend that was cool 10 years ago.
It was cool 20 years ago. It was 20 years, dude.
Oh my God.
They were doing that when we were in high school, man.
That's true.
But no, I do like this theory that it works, and it's cool that it finally does work. But also, even before he injects himself, this sequence is so terrifying where they're sneaking around, and then they start to get chased by all those zombies. The hordes come. The tall guy, just bumping into everything.
Oh my God.
Bumps into everything.
Hits everything.
He hits a soda can when they're entering the cafeteria.
It would have been better if he didn't even come.
I know. What the fuck are you here for? We don't need your help.
Yeah, he Gerry found it on his own.
He did.
Yeah.
They didn't need, but it's clever because they needed a way to clear out the laboratory. So even though this was a rewrite and a reshoot, it's actually really well thought out and really well written.
For like, they started at a certain point and they had to make the movie work in 30 minutes. And I think that Goddard and Lindelof and McCord did a great job with like salvaging a situation. And then the ending happens and he's it's a positive ending. He's on the boat reuniting with his family. Freeze frame ending. It's a very sweet, uplifting ending that I think obviously leans better into if you want to make this a sequel, if you want to make this a trilogy like they were planning. Ending on a higher note obviously is going to help audiences who want to come back. Now, they tried making the sequel to this for years, and 2 very high-profile directors were attached, as well as writers. Stephen Knight wrote a draft of a sequel.
Oh, no way.
Like, acclaimed writer. He's written a ton of things.
Peaky Blinders.
Peaky fucking Blinders. Huge writer. As well as another writer I can't remember off the top of my head. J.A. Boyena, the Spanish director, was attached to direct this film for 2 years. He just did The Society of the Snow. He left this project, and I think the development was not going well with this sequel either, and he left it to do Society of the Snow in 2019. And then David Fincher swooped in, liking the film and wanting to do a sequel with Brad Pitt. He had an idea for a film, which he actually talked about in an interview about a month ago, and he said that the film that he had in mind for a sequel, and it would have been very much similar to what we got in The Last of Us with the Joel and Ellie storyline. It would have been Gerry and one of his daughters. They've survived, and there's a new zombie outbreak that they're trying to outrun and get through. And it would have been very much on the scale and idea and tone of The Last of Us. That project fell through. The main reason why Paramount has not pursued a sequel to World War Z is because China has officially said they will no longer release films about zombies or ghosts in their country. And so studios like Paramount, where they think they know they're going to get a big chunk of box office in the Chinese market, they don't want to pursue films in those genres anymore, because if they're making a big blockbuster like this that costs a lot of money, because they think that it will be cost ineffective without having the Chinese market to get costs back up, to recuperate costs.
I mean, that's a stupid excuse, honestly, because movies are, if you're good movies coming out in the United States, it's making $200 million domestic every time.
They'll do really well.
Plenty international. I mean, there are huge hits that don't get released in China that still make a ton
But
of
China
money.
is the second biggest market for film.
Yeah, it is.
For theatrical release.
But I mean, still what? You're not going to make the movie now? It's kind of silly.
I agree.
Especially if you're going to tone down the scale and go $50 million budget. Why the hell not?
Well, Fincher, he wouldn't make it 50. It would still be 100 million for sure.
I bet.
He wanted Steve Jobs to be 100 million. I mean, Dragon Tattoo to be 100
I was going to say,
million.
was he attached to Steve Jobs?
Yeah, he was attached to Steve Jobs, and he had Christian Bale set as Steve Jobs. The one that Danny Boyle ended up making, the Aaron Sorkin film, it was Christian Bale as Jobs, David Fincher directing, and Sony didn't give him the money he wanted to make the film.
Come on, man. It's David Fincher. Dragon Tattoo was a $100 million budget.
Dragon Tattoo.
It just was a bit of a disappointment at the box office, unfortunately, because that movie's so good.
Because his movies are expensive because of how precise of a filmmaker he is. He is on sets for a while, and he spends a long time shooting. And also, he does use a lot of CGI. So his films do cost more than another filmmaker might make of the same kind of movie. So his film would have still been $100 million. I doubt it would have been $190 million, but still it would have been an expensive movie.
It's too bad because I feel like
I think a $100 million World War Z sequel by Fincher would have been great and would have been successful.
I feel like it still hasn't been too long for a sequel to be successful. You know, obviously Top Gun Maverick is almost 40 years later when that movie came out. You know, 34 or 35 years later that movie came out and was a massive hit. And I think that this movie is still on people's radars of being great and enjoying it when they watch it for the first time. I still think that a sequel could get pulled off if they go ahead with it, but it's a damn shame that they won't, because I would love to see a sequel to this movie. I would really enjoy it.
Yeah. Something like this film, I'm not sure a sequel this late in the game is going to work. Especially if you're going to follow the Gerry character. I think it's just been too long. It's not really like an iconic movie.
Yeah, like Top Gun, everyone loves that movie. It's a highly rewatched movie.
And this movie isn't really that liked from audiences. It's like we said, a 7 on IMDb. That's one dot above 6.9.
You can do math.
I can.
1 decibel.
1 decibel. 1 dot.
1 dot above, 1 dot below 7, Dad. Who sounds like a kid now, motherfucker? We got him.
Busted.
1 dot, 0.1. What's that mean, Dad?
And then also a 3.1 on Letterboxd.
Yeah,
So not a good rating. So I don't think that audiences want a sequel to this.
You're probably right.
And I also think that really most fans of the book, I am a huge fan of the book, and I think this is still a good movie. There are a lot of fans of the book who do not like this adaptation of the material. And it's very much voiced online.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think you're probably right then. It's probably too late.
I think this is an IP that it's not going to be, we're never going to see it again.
It had momentum, but they dropped the ball.
They could have made something really cool. They could have.
They blew it because they wanted to do a trilogy.
They could have called it World War III, the third one. But it is what it is. I get the reasoning behind not making a sequel, but I also think I don't agree with it.
Yeah,
I think the movie still could have made without the Chinese market at least $500 million if it was a Fincher movie and it was very good. Could have cost $100 million, $50 million in marketing. They would have profited.
Fincher zombie movie. That'd be incredible. I love Fincher so much, and I would love to see him do another movie in the realm of monsters. You know, his first movie was a monster movie with Alien Cubed, Alien 3. And he hasn't really touched that genre since. Of course, he deals with monsters in terms of human monsters with serial killers. But to see Fincher do another monster film, I think that would be epic.
That'd be sick, man.
It'd be absolutely epic. Him and zombies.
Sick. Too bad. It's too bad. And J.A. Boyano, he's a great director too. He could have. I bet he could have made a great movie. But I don't think we'll ever get a World War Z sequel.
I mean, I would love to see the Russian footage, though. The Russian battle. I bet you it's pretty cool.
Yeah, you can see some images, and there is, again, like 3 or 4 shots in the sizzle reel at the end of this movie.
Gotcha.
And again, another thing that I don't like about the film, one of my only other few knocks on the film is, and I understand why they did it, is the Brad Pitt's narration at the end. Like, who is he talking to? Is he talking to the audience? He's never broke the fourth wall before, and he's talking about, we're going to fight, and we're going to get through this, and we know how to fight back, and blah, 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 blah. And it's, like, inspiring and hopeful, but it's, like, it comes out of nowhere. There was never, ever a voiceover or narration before that. And also, is he talking to the audience? Or is he just talking to, like, other people? I know they did it to wrap up the film, and it was, like, kind of a necessity, I guess. But for me, whenever I watch the film, I'm like, who's Brad talking to?
It would have been more consistent if he was on a TV show. Because it opens up with news anchors and, and stuff like that.
That would work, too.
So it probably would work better with that. Or if he's on a podcast. Before they were really a big thing. Oh, man.
But I do really like the movie. I think it's awesome. I think it's a lot of fun. And it's a great spectacle. It's just a good blockbuster. Summer. See some crazy stuff. See some otherworldly images. And seeing the genre that I love, the zombies being put on such a big scale. I really do enjoy the film. And it's a very good rewatch, too.
Oh, yeah. Well, thanks so much for tuning in, Anthony. You did a great job this episode.
Did I?
Yeah, you were really fantastic.
Thanks,
just saying.
man.
Just want to let everyone know. Even though he talks like a kid sometimes. He's really great.
Thanks, man.
Hey, what's the dot mean, Dad? The Dewey Decimal System?
I really like this movie. It's really good.
Again, I had a blast revisiting this movie and talking about it. It was so fun to do an episode. We love zombies. And we love horror movies, and Brad Pitt as well. Thank you so much for tuning in, everybody. Become a patron today at patreon.com/Raiders of the Lost Podcast. Leave those 5-star ratings and reviews on Spotify and Apple. And take care, everyone.
See you next time.
This episode was executive produced by our chosen one patrons, Cody Moen, Andrew Hagan, Becca Keene, Benjamin Cook, Calvin Murphy-Griggs, Nicholas Martin, Darian Singleton, Tyler McFly, Andrew Hagan. Our chosen one patrons are our biggest supporters. Thank you so much. Raiders of the Lost Podcast is a mirror image production. Sound mixing done by Jacob Kossler. Opening music by Chase Jackson. Thank you for watching Raiders of the Lost Podcast. Be sure to hit that subscribe button, hit the like button as well, notifications for sure. Listen to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, everywhere you can listen to podcasts. And be sure to check out this other content we have on our YouTube channel.